Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Unknown location, year X 784. The sky was seemingly set afire as it was now a mixture of reds, oranges, yellows, pinks and purples, thus marking that sundown was coming upon the kingdom of fury. Naruto and Kurama traversed the land of fury for what seemed like weeks or months. With Naruto's ability to absorb the Eternano from the air to create condensed magic energy as a meal, he rarely had to venture towards a town to satisfy his hunger and thirst, and with Kurama being, partially, a fire kitsune, the Exceed rarely required the need for drink and ate fire.
This, he gained from Naruto as he ate the flames of the blades of Merlin. Although they hardly ever needed to eat, that didn't stop them from eating at every town they went to just so they could enjoy the taste of real food. As the two continued to walk through the land, Kurama sniffed the air. Ah, I love the smell of fresh, forest air. Kurama exhaled a stream of fire and held out his paw to catch the, now burnt, bird and ate it. Naruto remained silent as he adjusted his cloak before removing the mask that covered the lower half of his face. Ever since the boy had left Zabuza and Haku 4 years ago, the blonde had decided to find something to cover the lower half of his face, in remembrance of his former sword-wielding teacher. Do you really have to wear that? Kurama asked. The blonde Dragonslayer nodded. Yup. Besides, you shouldn't be one to talk. You have a hood on almost all the time. Naruto retorted as he finished pulling down the skin-tight mask. Also, everyone looks badass when you cover an area of your face. Then you should cover your whole face so no one will see the ugliness. He laughed before the cat was knocked off from his perch as Naruto picked him up and dropped him on the ground. Your hood covers your entire face, so I'm lucky that I don't have to see your hideous face. Naruto countered. Kurama continued to laugh as he flew after Naruto and landed back on his head. Oh come on, you know I look awesome. Kurama smirked. Naruto rolled his eyes at the red and black furred cat. The Exceed then sniffed the air before gaining a perplexed look in his crimson orbs. Kurama performed era and sprouted his white feathered wings before taking to the skies. He took another deep breath through his nose, Naruto watching in confusion as Kurama looked down at him. There's a town up ahead, the Exceed called out to the blonde. Naruto tilted his head. How far? He asked. Kurama sniffed the air once more. About 10 miles in the direction we were heading. It should take us an hour if we walk. Kurama flew back down and landed atop his perch, also known as Naruto's head. The town seems rather old too because it smells like eroded limestone and brick. Alright, we'll stop off there for a while and rest. Maybe take a day or two off from walking. Naruto said. A deafening silence filled the air as they continued to walk. Kurama watched the blonde before frowning. So, when do you think you will go back for Wendy? Kurama asked. Naruto stopped and his lips formed a frown before he adopted a thinking position. How long has it been? Since I left her, he turned to ask. Kurama shrugged. How old are you now? Physically, I mean. Kurama clarified since they did spend many a year within the pocket dimension when they had begun their training with Acnologia, and the dragon did state that time moved faster in the other dimension. I'm 20. Naruto replied. Kurama nodded. Then it's been 7 years since you left Wendy. Naruto chuckled lightly at that. She's 12 right now. I wonder how she is doing, the Apocalypse Dragonslayer wondered. Kurama patted the blonde's head. I'm sure she's fine, Naruto. She is your Imouto and her student. If she were anything lesser than that, then she wouldn't be fine. Kurama grinned foxily at Naruto. The blonde Dragonslayer nodded with a smirk. True, Wendy would be fine since she was under my tutelage. The Dragonslayer spoke with a prideful tone, a tone he gained from his adoptive father. Besides, if she wasn't, I'd kill whoever harmed her before I go to pound the weakness out of her being. Naruto said. Kurama blinked. Did you just make a joke? Naruto frowned. Of course not. Humor is beyond me. Kurama rolled his eyes at the blonde. Yep, he made a joke, Kurama thought to himself. You're really annoying, just like your father. Which one? Which one? What kind of stupid question is that? Naruto flicked the winged cat on the forehead. Acnologia it is, then. Naruto said. He then looked back to the crimson-eyed cat. So how much farther to the town? Kurama sniffed the air as the blonde asked his question. About 5 more miles. The fox-costumed cat replied. Naruto grabbed Kurama and took to the skies before flying off, a sonic boom sounding as he broke the sound barrier. Do you really have to break the speed of sound? Kurama deadpanned. Naruto nodded with a mischievous look in his eyes. It's fun. He deadpanned, causing Kurama to sweat drop. Tully Village. Naruto hovered over Tully Village. The village was a decent size, about half the size of Clover Town. It seemed to be composed of many old-looking buildings, and a large clock tower stood out amongst the throng of buildings. Probably a tourist village. Naruto thought as he spied a few people taking pictures with image capturing lacrimal before moving on. This is a rather quiet place. We could settle down here for a while, Kurama said. Naruto shrugged in response to the Exceed's statement.
We could, was all he said before his eyes narrowed upon the presence of numerous rune knights.
What are rune knights doing here? He asked more to himself than Kurama. The fox-costumed cat watched the soldiers of the Magic Council with a calculating look. Odd. This town doesn't look like a place where rune knights would need to be stationed. Kurama looked around before spying a large sign for a pub down below. Oh, look. A pub. Those places tend to be chock full of information. The red-eyed Exceed informed his partner, also. There's alcohol. Kurama grinned as he sat up and tugged at Naruto's golden locks as if they were the reins for horses. Mush, brat. The fire whiskey awaits. Naruto glanced upwards at the red-eyed cat. And, are you serious? Look plastered on his face. The crimson Exceed grinned foxily in response. I see. Well, I'm only buying 10 bottles, no more. Oh please, you could afford to buy the whole place with what Acnologia left behind as your inheritance. Kurama rolled his eyes. Naruto smirked. True, but try not to pass out this time. Nay, furball? Kurama huffed at that. Please, I burn through alcohol. Not when it comes to fire whiskey.
Naruto replied before diving down from the skies and landed in front of the pub. The townsfolk below were in shock at seeing a man fall from the heavens and suddenly appear as if he were flying. The people began to talk amongst one another, and Naruto, deciding he wanted to look like a badass, pulled up his face mask and entered the pub, kicking the door open. The occupants stared at the blonde as he entered before returning to their own conversations. Naruto walked up to the bar and sat down.
The bartender walked up to Naruto. Said bartender was a voluptuous, blue-haired woman with violet eyes. She wore a black dress with a slit along the length revealing much of her leg and a neckline that revealed much of which appealed to the eye. Naruto raised an eyebrow as the bartender winked at him. So, handsome, what can I get ya? She asked. Naruto kept back the urge to roll his eyes at the woman. Get me 10 bottles of fire whiskey for the cat, Naruto said as he laid out a few gems on the table. The woman gasped as she picked them up and studied them. Are these real? Real as real can get. They don't break, that's how you can tell they're real,
Naruto said. The bartender threw down a ruby and picked it up and saw there were no cracks, no dents and nothing which revealed any physical damage. In fact, the floor was the one that received TD as she pocketed the rubies and emeralds before her and brought out the 10 bottles of fire whiskey. Kurama immediately jumped down from Naruto's head and threw back his hood. Upon doing so, he began to guzzle the fire whiskey as if it were his life source. So, care to tell me what's a handsome fella like you doing in a small town like Tully? The bartender asked as she wiped a glass clean. Naruto looked at the girl's name tag. Well, miss. Portia. You do know it is impolite to go around asking things that are none of your business, Naruto said as he scratched his cheek. The bartender, now identified as Portia, stroked her blue locks before reaching out to his mask. Well, I find people with a mysterious look to be rather enticing. She licked her lips. Naruto caught a glance from Kurama, who hissed at the woman. Portia backed off a bit as the cat turned back to its whiskey before reaching to pull down Naruto's mask, but he grabbed the offending hand and slammed it forcefully on the back counter. Do not touch the mask, Naruto growled. Portia nodded as she felt the killer intent from the blonde. So, got a name, boy? She asked. I believe we're not that far apart in age, so, boy, is not appropriate title for me. I'm guessing you're about 22. I'm 20. Anyways, I have no interest in granting you my identity, but I do have a question for you, Naruto asked. Portia blinked at the accurate measure of her age. Wow, you're good at guessing ages. You got mine spot on, Portia commented. Naruto gave a small smirk beneath his mask, but didn't respond verbally. Naruto and Portia remained silent for a while, taking in the sights of men and women drinking, flirting and partying to their heart's content. Then Naruto decided to break the ice. So about that question? Naruto said. Portia blinked in confusion before having her face meet her palm. Oh right, you wanted to ask me something. My bad. Naruto waved his hand to say that it was no trouble. Portia crossed her arms beneath her large chest as she bent over to lean against the bar counter. Naruto looked at her face so as to not get another nosebleed and have a repeat situation of what happened with Levi in Anabu's town. Alright, smart guy. What you got to ask me? She asked. I want to know why these people here are all uneasy, he said. Why? Portia pursed her lips as she stared into Naruto's emotionless blue orbs, and even if they revealed nothing to her, she could tell that he wouldn't leave without an answer. Well, the thing is that a various series of kidnappings have been occurring here in Tully Village. The people of the village are being taken by the Devon theft family. They've been kidnapping people with the help of the Dark Guild, Black Knight. Naruto and Kurama looked at each other upon the mention of the Dark Guild.
I've heard of them. Killed a few myself a while ago, Naruto said. Kurama continued to drink as he downed the 6th bottle of fire whiskey. Portia's eyes widened. You killed members from Black Knight? She asked. Naruto nodded. Tried to mug me. I stopped them before they could, he replied as he scratched behind Kurama's ear, causing the cat to purr. Portia leaned forward and then looked into the blonde Dragonslayer's eyes. Well, do you think you could help us? They've been doing it for a while and none of the guilds here in Fury have responded to the requests we've sent out. Portia pleaded. Naruto's eyes narrowed. And why should I help this town? People can't always be around to fight your battles. Get up and do it yourselves, Naruto said coldly. Portia's eyes lined with tears. You're a bastard, she exclaimed. And what if I am? Besides, what's so important about these Black Knight people? They're weak and insignificant. The blonde replied, they're hardly worth my time and I'm not going to go and waste it to try and get rid of something that other guilds could have done long ago. Portia remained silent as tears flowed from her eyes. But my sister, she, Naruto sighed as he watched the blue-haired woman cry in front of him. However, he suddenly felt a tap on his shoulder. Naruto turned around. What? He asked. He looked to see a large man standing before him. He was rather fit, with bulging muscles that showed he spent a lot of time working his body. He was bald and wore a black leather jacket and no shirt underneath to show his 8-pack of abs. He also wore a pair of black ribbed jeans. The man stared at Naruto, cracking his knuckles. What the fuck do you think you're doing, making my girl cry like that? The man growled out. Naruto stared at the Portia who looked at the man. Rex, come on. Leave him alone, he didn't do anything, Portia said as she wiped away her tears. I'm just a bit upset from having Ileana taken from me. Rex's gaze hardened when he turned back to Naruto. You had her bring up Illy, that's it, you're dead. Rex picked up Naruto by the cloak collar and punched him, sending him flying through the air and crashing into a table. The table cracked in two and Naruto stood up, shaking his head to rid himself of the beer that got into his hair. Naruto stood back up, only to get punched in the face by Rex once more. Portia's eyes widened. Rex, stop it. Rex turned to the blue-haired girl and pulled his arm free from her grip as she tried to hold him back. This bastard made you cry by bringing up little Illy. I ain't gonna let that slide, Portia, Rex said. Naruto got up and adjusted his cloak and he turned to Portia. So, who is Ileana? Naruto asked. The members of the pub looked at the blonde. She's my little sister. She was taken away 2 days ago, and I don't know what the hell they've done with her, Portia sobbed. Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked at Kurama, who nodded in return. Kurama got up as he just finished his last bottle of fire whiskey and left the pub. Naruto then got up and was about to walk past Rex, but the larger man held back Naruto. Oi, I ain't done with you yet, Blondie. Rex growled as he went to punch Naruto once more, but Naruto simply raised his hand and caught the fist. The other occupants of the bar watched in awe as Naruto caught the larger man's fist as if it were a ball of paper. Naruto looked to Portia with a slightly softer look in his cold eyes. Where are they? He asked. The pub members watched Portia as they all had confused looks. Huh? What do you mean? She asked. Where are the headquarters for Black Knight and the Devon family? Naruto asked as he kept his grip on Rex's fist sturdy, ignoring the fact that the man's bones were currently being crushed as Naruto slowly applied more pressure. I don't know, Portia said. However, a random waitress raised her hand. Said waitress was a woman with a large bust and wide hips with red hair and gray eyes. I know where they are. I was taken to their base when they tried to kidnap me, but I managed to escape. The red-haired waitress said with a blush as she was suddenly feeling nervous at all the attention she was getting. She blushed a deeper crimson when she saw Naruto's beautiful, at least in her mind, cerulean blue eyes staring at her. And, they're just 5 miles south of here. It's a large, black building. You can't miss it. The waitress said with a slightly dazed tone of voice as she continued to stare into Naruto's eyes. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer nodded. Thank you, Naruto said politely before turning to Rex and crashed his knee into the man's stomach before letting go of the man's fist and punching him in the face. Rex flew through the wall of the pub and lay in a pile of wood in pain. Don't touch me again, or I will kill you, Naruto told Rex. Portia then stopped him and gave him a soft smile. Thank you. Naruto didn't reply as he watched Portia. If this woman lost her little sister, she'd no doubt lose her mind. Naruto nodded as an image of the Sky Dragonslayer smiling like she normally did entered his mind's eye. If something had happened to Wendy, he'd no doubt lose it as well. Family and Nakama were sumptured beyond belief. A quality that Zabuza had reminded him of having before he left. Naruto had made a promise to remain true to himself. He would teach those bastards at Black Knight a thing or two about why you never mess with a person's family, even if it wasn't his own. Mutual feelings of attachment can have you get like this? Kurama asked as he spied the rage in Naruto's cerulean orbs. The blonde and the Exceed exited the pub, a crowd watching them leave the village. Naruto turned to Kurama.
I promised Zabuza-sensei that I would remain who I was. These people, I can sympathize, as well as empathize with them. Having to leave Ayame Ne-chan, Sakura, Ino, Shikimori, Choji, Ji-chan, everyone, it actually led me to nearly having an emotional breakdown like when I learned of my true parentage. I felt the same way when I was forced to leave Wendy, but to a lesser degree since I did it within good reasoning on my part.
And the people in Clovertown? Those were Toussaint's orders, and besides, like I told him, I understood the fact that with me being his Dragonslayer, if people found out, they might use them to get to me. I have been doing what I can to remain secretive in my status as Toussaint's Dragonslayer, but I am merely human. I will slip up one day, but when I do, I'll kill the one who finds out. So you're using your empathy as a way to try and give reasoning to the fact that you're about to slaughter an entire dark guild? Not that alone, but Kurama. To have to leave someone is basically the same as losing them. You know as well as I do that I actually am very protective of those I keep close to me, and when I left the others in Clovertown, that is how I felt. I felt as if I were losing the people I cared about. My nakama. These people. They're more human than I am, and as such, they don't deserve to undergo what I had to go through and what I went through. Naruto sighed. Planting his face into his palm, he mumbled, sometimes I hate being overcome by emotions that make me do these things despite my better judgment. Don't we all? Besides, those people in Clovertown made you how you are today, and at least you're not as bad as Agnologia. You'd be destroying everything, including all the bars, and then I would have no fire whiskey to drink. Kurama said as he rested atop Naruto's head. Naruto rolled his eyes. Just shut up, you dumbass furball. The crowd behind the duo watched them leave Tully Village in the direction of the Black Knight Guild. What the hell does that crazy kid think he's doing? A man asked. He must be mental if he thinks he can take on the Devon Theft family and the entirety of the Black Knight Guild, a woman added. But he might be really strong. Did you see how he punched out Rex in one blow? True, but that alone ain't gonna keep you alive against a dark guild. Not even a full squadron of Rune Knights was able to get past the guild's defenses. Let's just pray that the boy gets to go to heaven when he's dead. The members of the crowd continued to converse amongst themselves, spouting theories of doubt or praise towards the blonde mage. However, what they didn't know was that the mage that left them was no ordinary mage. This was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and he is never to be underestimated. South of Tully Village, unknown area, Naruto walked and Kurama flew through the compilation of vegetation that made the forest surrounding Tully Village. As they traversed the forest, Kurama sniffed the air before looking at Naruto. Oi, Naruto, the blonde raised a hand. I know, Kurama.
I know. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse said. The duo continued to move through the forest before a large sword made of obsidian flew through the air, but Naruto raised his hand and caught the blade between his middle and ring fingers before throwing it up, allowing it to flip so that he could grasp it by the hilt. He threw the blade back from whence it came, and the sound of a blade slicing through flesh was heard. A loud scream followed after. Suddenly, the leaves of the trees above them rustled, and then arrows came down like rain. Their black arrowheads were tipped with a green liquid.
Most likely poison, Naruto thought before looking at Kurama. The Exceed had a bored look on his face as he watched the arrows speed towards them. Kurama spun in a circle, arm outstretched, and a ring of fire expanded from their location and burned through everything single arrow, and thus leaving them unharmed. Naruto and Kurama continued to venture closer and closer to the guild's location. Naruto quickly formed a dome of wind around his and Kurama's bodies to block another hail of arrows before reaching out and grabbing a Black Knight member as he tried to slash at Naruto with his sword. Naruto crushed his skull before throwing the body into another Black Knight and caused the man to impale his fellow member before he and the dead body were burned by Kurama's flames. Naruto then clapped his hands together.
Fuden. Atsugai wind style. Pressure damage. Naruto cried as a large, gray-green magic seal appeared over his head. The result of the attack caused the area around him and Kurama to suddenly become flattened by the extreme winds that forced themselves downwards. The hidden swordsmen and archers were all crushed by a single attack, and the duo continued to walk towards the, now visible, Dark Knight Guild house where the Devon Theft family was also located. Naruto saw that there were a few survivors from his attack and looked at Kurama. The Exceed grinned before changing into his kitsune form. Three tails swinging behind him. Oh, how I love to hunt. The kitsune said giddily before howling to the full moon as it hung in the night sky. Its light acting as a spotlight to show the Dragonslayer and the kitsune where the guild was, and to act as a witness to the deadly bloodbath that would ensue within the Dark Guild this night. Dark Guild, Black Knight main floor. The members of Black Knight were all drinking and laughing. So when do we go back to that village and pick us up another few whores? A member asked with a perverse grin on his face. Come on, man. We've already taken enough people for the slave trade. That blue-haired client,
Fellow will be coming by soon for the next set of people to help build his Tower of Heaven. Whatever the fuck that is. Another member responded to his comrade's question. He's a loony, that Jelal. Always spouting nonsense about eternal peace, and some resurrection or something into a perfect world. Idiot. A female member of Black Knight laughed before slapping a male member who managed to grope her breasts, sending him to the ground. The guild master was a large man, in terms of muscle size, not fat, and was laughing as he sat upon the throne set in the room. Master, when do we go back for more people? Another female member asked. The master waved his hand. We will return to Tully Village for another set of people in another hour, then we will have some fun. With our new guests, our client requested we get as many people as possible in the 2 weeks he has given us. By then, we should have enough people to satisfy that blue-haired idiot and we will get as much money as we can take. The master of Black Knight grinned widely before getting up. He walked over to a door that led to another part of the large guild. The master smirked as he saw the frightened men and women, ranging from teenagers to full-grown adults, backing into a single corner to try and escape the man. He bent down and cupped the cheek of a young girl who looked to be around 15. You better not mess up the transaction between the Black Knights, the Devon theft family and our client. Or else I'm going to be keeping back some of you for the guilds. Personal needs. The members of the kidnapped people were frightened beyond belief. The master of Black Knight then turned to see a small group of people standing behind him. The group consisted of a short, stocky man with beady black eyes and wore an expensive, dark green business suit. The man was boustache and was smoking a cigar. Next to him stood a rather thin woman with barely any curves at all. She had large brown eyes, and long black hair that flowed down to her shoulder blades, but had a long, thin nose making her look like a female Pinocchio. She wore a crimson dress and a pair of black high heels. On either side of the man and woman were two younger men, twins actually. They towered over the shorter, aforementioned man, and both had black hair cut into bowl shapes. The hair was long enough that it covered their eyes. They had bulbous noses and wore the same kind of clothing as the short man. Ah, Mr. Devon, so glad to have you back. I assume you have planned out the next run. The Black Knight Guild Master shook hands with the short man. Welcome back, Mrs. Devon. Dave. The master looked at the twins and always wondered why the Devons had named their children with the same name, even if they were twins. Of course, we will get even more money by the time the client arrives if we get more people for his cause. This tower, or whatever he is building, is requiring a lot of people though. Mr. Devon said. Mrs. Devon snorted. What does it matter, dear? As long as we get paid. She laughed. Dave laughed with their mother before she told them to shut up. As the Devons and the Black Knight Guild Master were conversing, the members of the Dark Guild were busy playing limbo. A rather fat man, despite his size, was able to win the contest, and this elicited a loud cheer from them, only for that cheer to be drowned out by the sound of a bestial roar. The guild became silent as the roar echoed through the air. The door to the guild shattered as a figure was thrown through it. The dust and wood cleared to reveal a tired-looking mage of the Dark Guild. Master, there's a. The man didn't get to finish as he was suddenly impaled through the chest by a fiery tail, courtesy of Kurama. His body then erupted into flames, turning into ash. The mages of Black Knight went into a panic before getting ready to attack as the fire tail vanished into the dark. What the fuck was that? A member cried out. However, they were all silenced when the roar was heard again. Then, the master got up and narrowed his eyes to see if he could be able to spot the thing that ended his mage's life within the dark recesses of the forest outside. However, he was surprised when a lone man emerged and walked up to the area where the destroyed door of the guild had once stood. The lower half of his face was covered by a face mask and a black cloak billowed in the wind. The man had spiky, golden locks and his head was bent low, hiding the rest of his face from view. The blonde stopped at the edge of where the door had once been. Are you Black Knight? The man asked in a monotone. The master gripped his large obsidian blade and pointed it at the blonde. So what if we are? You're going to be dead before you leave this place. The blonde chuckled at that, irking the master and the other mages. Oh no, it is you, who will be dead. Naruto's head snapped up and his eyes widened, changing from cerulean blue to pure white. Kurama, sick him. The howl of the demonic kitsune was heard as Kurama leapt over the 20-year-old blonde and began to take down many of the guild members in blasts of red flame. Naruto walked forth and spied the Devon family. What ugly pieces of shit. Naruto thought with a growl. Kurama reappeared next to him as he tackled a member that tried to take Naruto from behind. Naruto then whistled and Kurama stopped attacking. Naruto took a step forward and the large amount of Black Knight members were still aiming to take down the duo, despite their fear. Courageous, I'll give them that. But they are stupid if they think they can kill me. Naruto thought before the air in front of him distorted and a blast of wind crashed into 10 members, crushing their bones and killing them. The attack caused the guild to shake from the impact the members made with the wall, and the Black Knight Guild master had forgotten to close the door, so the kidnapped people from Tilly village were all staring with wide eyes, and their taped mouths struggled to open wide in shock as they saw Naruto suddenly bend the wind around his arms and form wind blades. The blonde Dragonslayer sliced the members of the Dark Guild in half, chopped off their limbs, decapitated them, stabbed them through the heart and other vitals, while Kurama burned the bodies as they fell. Naruto dodged a double kick from 2 members before a gray-green magic seal formed in front of his hand.
Fuden, Kazegiri, wind style, air cutter. Naruto cried, launching an arc of wind at them and sliced them in half. Blood and gore filling the room. Naruto then spun and grabbed 2 female members and snapped their necks before throwing them to Kurama as he burned the bodies. The Kitsune was also taking down any of the mages that dared to use magic to try and stop his Dragonslayer partner's destructive rampage. The blonde kicked another 3 members with a wind-enhanced roundhouse, which had allowed for him to simultaneously cut them in half at the hip as an arc of wind ejected from the point of contact with the member he hit. The arc of wind flew through their bodies like they were water, and they fell to the ground, dead. Naruto took a deep breath.
Futon. Furyuden. A large wind dragon spiraled out of his jaws, and it began to tear apart the members that attacked him. He then twisted and placed his palms flat out in front of him. He drew them back before thrusting his palms forward. Futon. Repusho, wind style. Gale palm. 2 gigantic hands of wind slammed many Black Knight members into the walls of the guild, leaving 2 large hand-shaped holes in the wall. Naruto vanished into the wind many times, moving at the speed of the wind, and cut down the members of the guild at breakneck speeds. The guild master, the Devon theft family, and the kidnapped people all stared in shock as the blonde and the 3-tailed kitsune standing amongst the blood and gore before them. The wind bent to his command as he sliced off the head of another member and then kicked another in the skull, causing the neck of the victim to snap from the force. Naruto ducked beneath a stab from a sword and grabbed the member's outstretched arm and broke the arm at the elbow joint, causing the sword to fall. Naruto caught the blade and stabbed it into its original wielder's skull before withdrawing it and throwing it as if it were a kunai knife. The blade flew straight and true, impaling through at least 3 people in one go, making them look like a shish kebab. Naruto twisted and slammed a fist into another member's face, causing the nose to break before sending a blast of wind from the magic seal that formed in front of his palm, shredding the Black Knight member's face to the bone. Kurama then flipped and crashed a fireball down upon 3 members that tried to attack him with their magic and suffered a fiery end before another 3 had their faces burned off by Kurama's tails wrapped around them. A lightning spell flew towards Naruto, but a shield of wind stopped the attack before a disc of wind sliced the man in half, vertically. A numerous amount of fire spells flew through the air towards the duo, but Kurama took the attacks and used them as a meal.
Ah, that was nice. The blood-red kitsune commented as he licked his lips after eating the flames. He then twirled his tails in the air, and the tips of his tails each sported a small fireball. Small fiery comets descended upon the guild from the fireballs on Kurama's tails, burning everything in their path. The fact that there was wind from Naruto allowed for the flames to burn brighter and with more power.
During a small scuffle with a large crowd of Dark Knight members, the kidnapped people, despite they were tied up, managed to get up and hop out of a large hole in the wall. Futon. Kei's no Arashi. A shockwave of wind erupted from the center of a small mound of the Dark Guild's members as they tried to avail as the powerful tornado began to destroy all those that were unfortunate to stand in its way. The wind attack shredded their bodies, and one fell down towards Naruto. The blonde caught the dead female member and crushed her skull like it was a grape, blood leaking down his hands. He threw the dead body amongst the others before going into a handstand and spun. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. Whirlwinds swirled around the blonde's legs to form miniature cyclones before a violent windstorm erupted as a result of the blonde man's rotation, cutting down another number of Black Knight members. Naruto bent his arms and then leapt into the air as he pushed off and flipped so that he was now right side up before encasing his arms in wind.
Futon. Arashi no Hunseki, wind style, storm crusher. He slammed his arms down and hurricane force winds erupted from the contact with the floor and sent bodies, both living and dead, flying through the air. Naruto waved his arms as if he were conducting an orchestra, and streams of high velocity, gale force winds followed his directions. Naruto then manipulated the winds to form blades around his arms.
Futon. Kei's no Yaiba. Naruto then vanished into the wind as he began to move swiftly and silently to kill his opponents. Futon no Kenjutsu. Shikaze no Mai, wind-style sword technique. Dance of the Four Winds. The bodies fell as they were continuously sliced, decapitated, impaled, and other forms of being bodily harmed. Naruto then clapped his hands together and a strong vortex of wind surrounded him before it began to expand and shred everything that it came into contact with, not including Kurama. Futon. Kami Oroshi, wind style. Godly wind from the mountains.
Naruto stopped as he nearly engulfed the entire guild, and the wind vortex died down to a simple breeze before it became nothing. Naruto and Kurama observed their handiwork. The guild was burning and the two spotted the frightened guild master and the Devon theft family hiding behind a large set of boxes that contained their stash of rum and food among other things. Naruto's glowing white eyes appeared even more frightening to them as the light of the fires mixed in with them. Kurama's crimson eyes seemed to burn like the flames as his heated glare met their eyes. "You humans disgust me," Naruto spoke. "To think you sell your own species for the mere prospect of money, it sickens me greatly." Kurama added. The guild master was about to utter an excuse when Naruto turned to him.
"Quiet, human." The guild master immediately shut up and began to feel a warmth in his pants. He had just pissed himself. Naruto walked to the Devon theft family and held up his hands. A wind blade formed around the hand and he pointed it at them. "You are not worthy to be able to live like the rest of this pitiful guild. I will destroy all humans who dare to perform such acts and I will purge them from the face of the planet. These red flames and the slicing winds will tear everything apart and you will all go down with it. But I have a more fitting end for you pieces of scum." Naruto looked to Kurama. The demon Kitsune met his partner's gaze and grinned widely. His toothy grin spoke volumes to the criminals before them and Kurama raised his claws and engulfed them in fire. Naruto quickly raised a hand and laid it out flat, palm facing the burning floor. He then forced downwards and the Devon family and the Dark Knight Guild Master were suddenly experiencing extreme amounts of wind pressure forcing itself upon their bodies. With this amount of pressure on them, the group of criminals could only blink as Kurama's claws neared them. The demon fox grinned before impaling their eyes, burning them from the inside out. The people screamed in agony as their eyes were turned to nothing. Naruto then smirked at their screams. "Ah, the screams." He smirked to himself before frowning at his immovable hostages. "They annoy me, time to die." The Devon family screamed along with the Master of Black Knight before Naruto's eyes glowed brighter and black and blue magic energy coated his arms. Mokashiryu no Hakai Sume, Apocalypse Dragon's Annihilation Claws. Naruto roared before slamming the claws of the black dragon down upon his victims and a large explosion of magic formed as soon as the claws made contact with the criminals. A large shockwave erupted with enough force to shake the earth and the kidnapped victims who had run a decent distance away from the guild, also managed to feel it, causing them to fall to the ground. They turned back and gaped as they saw the guild suddenly tremble and looked as if its flaming remains were expanding. Black and blue beams of energy poked through the cracks before the guild itself exploded into outwards and turned into nothing but pieces of broken metal and wood. Naruto and Kurama looked at each other with bored looks. "Well, that was fun." Kurama grinned, tail swishing in the air with glee. "Indeed," Naruto agreed as he and the demonic fox turned back and began to walk back towards the crowd of shocked, but still tied up, people. Naruto and Kurama raised an eyebrow at them before Naruto raised his hand. The group flinched out of the fear that he was going to kill them as well. However, they were surprised when Naruto merely gave a wave of his hand and multiple wind blades sliced the ropes that bound their hands and feet. They then tore the duct tape from their mouths before looking at Naruto. "Thank you for saving us." They all bowed to Naruto with large grins on their faces. Naruto just stared for a moment at seeing them bow to him. It would have been satisfying if they hadn't been hostages. "I didn't aim to save you all. I just wanted to kill those Black Knight members." "Even so," a man spoke, "you did indirectly save us, so again, thank you." Naruto and Kurama looked at each other before walking around the group. The crowd's eyes still trained on the masked blonde. The duo then headed back to Tully Village, the crowd following behind them as if they were their leaders. "Well, this is an interesting development," Naruto commented as he saw the hearts appear in some of the eyes of the women in the crowd as they looked at him. "You're still a real lady killer even with your face covered, nay, Naruto," Kurama joked, thus earning the fox-costumed cat a slap on the head. Tully Village. Naruto and Kurama turned to the crowd of previous kidnaps and looked back at the entrance to the village. The sky was beginning to gain a golden glow as the sun was about to rise. The two looked over the crowd. "Your families are waiting for you," Kurama said. "Time to go." Naruto grabbed Kurama and the wind swirled around them. Shunpo no Kazejin. Wait. A young girl who looked to be about 16, with blue hair called out to the boy and Exceed before they vanished into the wind. The girl frowned as her hero had disappeared. However, she then took off towards the village, her fellow villagers running after her. "Portia Ne-chan." The young teenage girl called out. The members of Tully Village were all rudely awakened by the sudden shouting and screaming below and couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the kidnapped people had returned safely. Ileana. Portia ran towards her little sister and the 16-year-old hugged her older sister. "How?" "It was awesome, Ne-chan. We were all trapped and stuff, but then this blonde guy wearing a mask came out of nowhere with a fox that could breathe fire and then he started beating up all the members of the Black Knight Guild. He was bending the wind, Portia. It was so cool," she said with a dreamy look in her eyes. Portia chuckled and was about to call her sister crazy when she began to hear the other victims of the kidnapping beginning to praise their saviors. "Well, what do you know?" A man from the pub spoke. "The brat actually did it." I know, it was amazing. One of the kidnapped people replied. He controlled the wind as if he were its master and that Kitsune breathed fire and manipulated it. I couldn't believe my eyes when that blonde killed ever is batting an eyelash, a woman told her friend. We should thank him, another villager yelled. He left already with his companion, though it was odd how he became a cat all of a sudden, another villager said. Well, if he left, then we should at least honor him with a name. A female villager spoke. The villagers all agreed to the idea and began to call out random titles before one was uttered by Portia. How about Ogo no Fujin, the golden wind god? The blue-haired woman suggested. The villagers went silent before nodding. A fitting name, Portia. One of the kidnapped villagers agreed, his golden hair and his ability to bend the wind as if he were the wind god itself. The villagers cheered as they began to spread the word about the Ogo no Fujin. Naruto hovered in the air using futon. Tobu, his figure outlined with the amber light of the rising sun. His piercing blue eyes stared down at the villagers, arms folded across his chest. His black cloak billowed in the wind as he levitated. Nothing could ruin this epic mental picture. Except for the fact that within a few seconds, the blonde Dragonslayer released an annoyed groan before facepalming as he was being heralded as a god. Not that he didn't mind the praise, he just would have preferred being called a dragon god or something else. Well, Naruto. Looks like you're a celebrity. Kurama chuckled from atop Naruto's head. The blonde Dragonslayer sighed. At least the name sounds cool. Ogo no Fujin, it's fitting for one such as myself. A god among men. Naruto said before flying out of Tully village at a relaxing speed. You're so self-absorbed. And the great Kurama isn't. Besides, you didn't even get a cool name like me. Of course not. I'm self-respecting. And I am a bit miffed at that. They're probably just waiting to look for a badass name for me. I'm too awesome for titles. Well, I'm just prideful in who I am, and as if. You're just a furball. Naruto countered. Kurama slapped Naruto on the head as the blonde found a place to land. However, as he landed, he heard the sound of shouting up ahead. Naruto looked up from the ground and squinted when he saw a rising dust cloud that was slowly approaching him. What do you make of it? Naruto asked his fox-like partner. The Exceed shrugged. I say hit in with a wind blast and kill it, he suggested. Naruto didn't reply as he continued to watch the approaching figure. Or rather figures. One figure was running extremely quickly while the other was flying. Kurama. I think there's another one of your people here. Another Exceed? Kurama questioned before spying the flying figure gliding alongside the running figure. The figure kept running, not even stopping to realize he was about to run into Naruto. Ah! The figure screamed as he rushed towards Tully village only to be sent to the ground as he fell from making contact with Naruto. The blonde barely even moved an inch from the hard collision. Naruto and Kurama looked at one another before looking down at the 17-year-old boy before them. Ah! Watch where you're going! The boy yelled. The creature that was gliding was indeed an Exceed, the two concluded as they watched it fly down to the boy's eye level. I believe you should be the one to watch where you are going. Naruto stated with a bored tone. The boy growled before his nose twitched. Oi! You smell familiar. Have I met you before? Naruto froze as he was beginning to walk away from the boy and the Exceed. Naruto watched the boy with a calculating gaze before spying a guild stamp at the boy's left shoulder. Who are you? Naruto asked as he smelled a scent present only on Haku and Wendy, but it couldn't be possible. Well, we're mages from Fairy Tail. This is Happy. Naruto and Kurama sweat dropped as they saw the winged, blue cat eat his fish before declaring with a loud voice, 2 words. Aye sir. The boy then slicked his hand through his spiky pink hair and displayed a toothy grin. This also allowed the two to view the sharp canines that were only present in people like Naruto. And I'm Natsu. Natsu Dragneel. Outside of Tully village, year X 784. Naruto blinked as he watched the pink-haired boy. He was rather fit, sporting lean muscles that looked like he more built for speed and agility, but there was some strength in the boy's body as well. He wore a black vest which was trimmed with orange. He wore no shirt, so it revealed his torso and abdominal areas. He wore a pair of white, cotton pants and a pair of black sandals. A white muffler was worn around his neck and it sported a scale-like pattern on it. Natsu had dark-colored eyes with slitted pupils, another mark to show that he was one of the Dragonslayers. So, who are you? You seem strong. Wanna fight? Natsu said, getting into a fighting stance, fists raised. Natsu. Happy whined, we have to finish the request and take care of that Devon theft family. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. The Devon theft family, you say? The blue Exceed nodded. Aye, we just received the request the day before and we were about to arrive, but Natsu got tired so we had to stop and rest. Happy explained. Naruto and Kurama looked at each other. Well, I'm afraid you came too late, Kurama said. Natsu and Happy looked at each other and then back at Naruto. Huh? Natsu said dumbly, what do you mean? I mean that someone else already took care of those idiots. slaughtered the entire Devon theft family as well as the dark guild they were in league with. The fox-costumed cat explained. Natsu and Happy gaped in shock. You can't be serious, they exclaimed. The blonde nodded to his fellow Dragonslayer. Yes. So just go back to Fairy Tail and tell them you came too late, Naruto said before turning around. Wait, Natsu called out. Naruto turned back with a perplexed expression shown in his eyes. What? Well, you seem really strong and since I have nothing else to do. Wanna fight? Naruto stared hard at the pink-haired son of Igneel. I could test his strength. The child smells of fire. The son of Igneel. Naruto thought before turning around. Alright, I'll grant you the ability to face me in combat, Naruto said. Natsu grinned widely as his fists suddenly ignited, surrounding themselves in bright orange-yellow flames. Yosh, I'm all fired up, Natsu grinned toothily. Insert music. Dragonslayer theme. Natsu leapt towards Naruto, fists ablaze. Karyu no Tekken, Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. Natsu declared before crashing the fist down upon Naruto. A large smoke cloud erupted from the point of contact and Natsu grinned. Aye sir, go Natsu, Happy cheered for the son of Igneel. However, as the smoke cloud cleared, Natsu's and Happy's eyes widened to see Naruto was no longer there and Kurama was flying above Natsu's head. You're slow, Fire Dragon. Naruto stated coldly before kicking Natsu in the back sending the pink-haired boy soaring through the air. Naruto then vanished into the wind and appeared in front of the Fire Dragonslayer and slammed his fist down on Natsu's head. The pink-haired teenager was sent to the ground before Naruto grabbed Natsu by the back of his vest and threw him into a tree. Natsu released a cry of pain as he made contact with the bark before standing back up. You're really strong. Natsu's fists blazed once more. Awesome. Natsu inhaled deeply and Naruto smirked as he watched Natsu. Show me the power of Igneel, boy. Naruto muttered to himself as Natsu reared his head back. Karyu no Hoko, Fire Dragon's Roar. A red magic seal appeared in front of Natsu as he unleashed a blazing inferno from his jaws. The tongue of flame sped towards Naruto and the Apocalypse Dragonslayer took the attack head-on. Natsu grinned as he saw his opponent being engulfed by the flames. Alright, I got him. Natsu pumped his fist into the air in victory. However, the fires died down and Natsu's eyes widened when he saw Naruto standing with a shield of wind in front of him. I expected more from you, son of Igneel. Naruto stated. Natsu's eyes widened. How do you know Igneel? Do you know where he is? Naruto didn't respond as he sent a blast of wind from his mouth and it impacted with Natsu's chest, knocking the air out of his lungs and sent the Fire Dragonslayer skidding backwards. Natsu coughed as he aimed to retrieve the air within his lungs. Naruto shook his head as he saw Natsu clutch his injured body. Pity, Natsu Dragneel. I thought Igneel Teme would have done a better job at raising his child. Natsu's body froze. What, did you call him? Igneel Tem, a bastard of a fire dragon. Are you deaf? Naruto asked. He then raised a curious eyebrow as Natsu's body became completely shrouded in fire, eyes seeming to glow red within the shroud. Do not insult Igneel. Do not insult my father, Natsu roared before taking off towards Naruto and shot a fiery kick to Naruto's face. Karyu no Kajutsume, Fire Dragon's Claw. Naruto easily dodged the straightforward attack by tilting his head, but Natsu suddenly rotated with the attack and went into a spin kick. Naruto ducked beneath it and grabbed Natsu's leg and threw him into the ground. However, the son of Igneel quickly recovered and shot a bicycle kick to Naruto's face. The blonde leaned back and jumped over the sweep kick that followed after before deflecting the fist that the pink-haired mage aimed for Naruto's stomach. Natsu jumped and slammed a flaming axe kick to Naruto's skull, but the Apocalypse Dragonslayer twisted his body to the side and the ground cracked from the impact Natsu made with the earth. Naruto slammed a straight kick to Natsu's face, but he remained stationary. A fact that caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow in confusion. Natsu had raised his hand and blocked the kick before setting his hand ablaze. Naruto quickly swept his hand to the side as if he were slapping the air and a powerful gust of wind slammed into Natsu's body causing the 17-year-old's grip to weaken. Naruto pulled his boot free and patted the flames down and frowned when he saw the small burn on it. He watched as Natsu gathered flames in both of his hands. Karyu no Kone, Fire Dragon's Brilliant Flame. Naruto watched the raging fireball that sped towards him before forming a wind blade. He allowed the blade to extend before rotating on his heel and used the momentum from the rotation to put more power into the downward slash of his Kase no Yaiba. The attack cleaved the fireball in two, causing two separate streams of fire to burn the area around Naruto. He then ducked to avoid the flying fist to his skull and performed an uppercut, nailing Natsu in the stomach. He then repeated the act, flying after Natsu as he continued to onslaught before grabbing Natsu by his ankles and performed a series of front flips as he allowed gravity to take its hold on them. A small crater formed as Naruto slammed his fellow Dragonslayer into the ground. However, Natsu performed a windmill and a whip of flame lashed out at Naruto,
who was surprised when he was nearly struck by the attack, having jumped over it. Natsu continued to spin, using the momentum to go into a handstand and pushed off before his arms became coated in fire.
Karyu no Yokugeki, Fire Dragon's Wing Slash. Natsu brought down the wings of flame on Naruto, who quickly flew out of the way and kicked Natsu in the side. The Fire Dragonslayer roared as he flipped in the air and ricocheted off of a tree and his hands became coated in fire. Karyu no Saiga, Fire Dragon's Crushing Fang. Natsu slammed his hands down on Naruto, but the blonde formed a blade of wind and blocked the attack before slamming his knee into Natsu's lower jaw. The two jaws met with a loud clack, and Natsu's head snapped upwards from the force. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer grabbed Natsu by the throat and threw him downwards before sending a blast of wind after him. Natsu lay in a crater, but he quickly got back up and then his body became similar to that of a large horn as it became engulfed in flames. Karyu no Kenkaku, Fire Dragon's Swordhorn. Natsu sped towards Naruto, but the blonde looked at his fellow Dragonslayer with a smirk. Your emotional state seems to affect your bad or still weak, young Fire Dragon. Naruto thought as he raised his fist and tornado formed around it. He then crashed the attack down on Natsu's skull. The pink-haired mage was sent to the earth once more and Naruto fell after him, slamming feet first against Natsu's vulnerable body. Natsu coughed as he felt the blonde's feet impact with his stomach and the earth cracked beneath him from the force of the impact. Grow stronger, son of Igniel. You have potential, but that is all you have. Potential, Naruto said before he looked at Kurama. The red-furred cat looked at Happy as he flew back to Naruto. Watch over that brat, Happy. He's going to hurt himself if he keep up that stubbornness, Kurama said. Happy still watched in shock as his friend was completely and utterly broken before him. Natsu. The blue Exceed cried out as he flew down to the pained Dragonslayer's side. I'll get stronger, he called out to Naruto as he sat up, albeit slowly, and I'm going to kick your ass. Naruto and Kurama rolled their eyes. From what Toussaint told me, Igniel used to over-exaggerate things as well, Naruto said to the red-eyed cat as it landed atop his head. Kurama chuckled when the wind began to pick up. He's weak, the fox-costumed Exceed said with a serious tone as soon as they vanished into the wind. Naruto and Kurama appeared in the skies and took off through the air. Potential is all he has. That's the problem with some people. And the dragons who are part of the Genso. They always look at what they could be and never what they have now. If they improve on that, Fire Dragon would be stronger than how he is now. He's a weakling. Maybe you should train him like you trained Wendy, Kurama suggested with a grin that would make the Cheshire cat proud. Naruto snorted in disgust. Me? Train the child of Igniel Teme? You have to be joking. The cat shrugged in response to Blonde's response. I'm just saying, if you could make Wendy strong, why not do the same for Natsu? Besides, you're going to need an army if you want to go and take on the Dragon King like what you told Acnologia. Naruto growled as the thought of the ruler of the dragons came into his mind. I do not require weak soldiers. Naruto growled out before taking on a boost of speed, a sonic boom noting his use of moving faster than the speed of sound. After a few minutes of flying, Naruto landed atop a tall tree and sighed as he watched the clouds, a habit he picked up from Shikamaru whenever he got bored or just wanted to rest. Fire Dragon is a weak excuse for a Dragonslayer, Naruto muttered. You said the same thing about Grandine's child and look how she turned out after you helped raise her for 1 year alone. Kurama said. The blonde scratched the back of his neck with a sigh before sitting down on the roof, ignoring the glances people gave him when they took notice of his position. He got into a meditative pose and calmed his breathing. He's too headstrong. He rushes into battles without thinking that his attacks will overwhelm his opponents. However, he does have one strength. His emotional status can affect the strength of his fighting abilities. When he got angry, his speed and strength increased by a noticeable amount. It did, didn't it? But like you said, potential is all he has going for him and what he can become, Kurama said as he stretched out on Naruto's head. Naruto closed his eyes for a few seconds before glancing around as he felt magic energy around him. Kurama. The red-furred cat replied. Naruto was about to speak, but his mind suddenly went blank on what he was about to say. Never mind, come on. We have to keep moving. Naruto took off through the air and Kurama looked confused. Why? It's not like anyone knows who we are and sure killing mages, even if they are members of a dark guild, is illegal due to the law made by the Magic Council. But it's not like anyone knows us and what we look like, the fox-costumed Exceed said. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse shook his head. I have a title and people know what I look like. It's because of this face mask that I'd have a higher chance of not getting caught if I take it off, Naruto said. The Exceed nodded. True. By the way, ever thought of taking a job as an assassin? Kurama asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. Why? Well, with our stealth prowess we could make a bit of money taking on requests that are outside of legal guilds' reaches. I have more than enough money and why would I waste my time with such a stupid occupation? Naruto argued. Kurama shrugged. Well, You get to kill people more, Kurama pointed out. Naruto's eyes narrowed in thought. Being an assassin does sound appealing. Plus, I could remain anonymous. So you're thinking about it? The cat questioned his partner. The blonde shrugged as he looked at the clouds again. I'll put it into consideration. Naruto then channeled more wind magic to the miniature tornadoes beneath his feet and a sonic boom trailed behind him as he took off. You really like to break the sound barrier, don't you? Naruto smirked. It's the only thing I get to destroy continuously, he replied. 2 days later, Magic Council Fury Branch Building. The Magic Council is the main ruling body in the entire world of magic. It comprises of council buildings stationed all over the continent in order to maintain order throughout the lands. The council rules over all legal guilds and have the ability to punish every and all mages who break the laws they have made. When a mage commits the act of killing or something illegal, that mage is labeled as a dark mage, and if the guild refuses to disband, the guild is labeled as a dark guild. Black Knight is an example of a dark magic council. Consists of 8 members who make the decisions as to what happens in Earthland and are the ones who bring about the formation of laws and what guilds should be disbanded and what not. The first member of the council, as well as its second seat, was an elderly man named Org. Org was a tall old man with a large gray beard, mustache and long gray hair. He had tanned skin and wore a cream robe-like set of clothing with a red line going down the middle of the robe. Over the robe, Org wore a dark blue and white cloak, the white taking up the majority of the cloak's surface area. A gold trim separated the white from the blue. The collar of the cloak was rather high and dark blue with a green area near the end of the collar and separated from the blue area by a vertical white line. A pair of black pants and brown shoes were shielded by the large cloak. Org had black eyes, but strangely had only one eye open while the other was tightly shut. Atop his head was a red devil-like sort of creature. Another member of the council is Li Ji. He is a tall, middle-aged man with black hair that has huge sideburns that almost touch his lips. His eyes are covered by dark-colored shades. He had thin, yet large lips, and small hairs were scattered along his chin. His outfit consisted of a white and blue robe, with the hood of the robe being put up. He wore a dark purple, V-neck shirt beneath the robe and a pair of black pants and brown shoes. The third member of the Magic Council was an old man of very small stature, who went by the name of Michello. He had short brown hair, but some tufts of hair seemed to styled into the shape of sharp triangles, similar to cat ears. A long, brown mustache lined his upper lip. His beady brown eyes were currently looking over his fellow council members. Michello wore a long-sleeved, blue t-shirt with black tiger stripes along the sleeves and the back of the t-shirt. He wore a pair of black pants and large brown shoes. A long, yellowish tail of some sort swished behind him, making his appearance all the more cat-like. A T-shaped cane was held in his hands. Shitu Yajima was a small, old man who sported no hair on his head. He had a large pair of eyebrows and a small mustache that were both a pale brown color. His eyes seemed to be in an ever-closed position, but when opened black irises within. He wore a pair of dark brown pants beneath a white kilt of some sort. An orange, long-sleeved sweater with black, vertical stripes on it, was worn as to cover his upper body. Atop his head was a reddish-violet hat with 3 spikes at the front part of the hat. Bellino, the eldest female member of the Magic Council, was an elderly woman with dark blonde hair that framed her face. The back of her hair was tied up to form multiple tails in the shape of flower petals. These tails were positioned in such a way, it gave her hair the appearance of a lion's mane or a sunflower. Like other members of the council, she had black irises. She wore red lipstick and red nail polish and had a slightly long nose, thus giving her a witch-like appearance. She wore a purple turtleneck sweater with black vertical stripes, but her impressive bust still revealed itself. She wore a long black skirt and a pair of black, flat-heeled shoes. Her cloak was a dark violet color with white lining along the length of the cloak from the tip of the collar to the hem. Her cloak was held by a golden cord which had 6 golden rectangular objects strung along it. The only other female member of the Magic Council's Fury branch was a beautiful pale-skinned woman with dark purple hair that stretched down to her mid-back, but it was currently tied into a single ponytail. She had on red lipstick as well. Her clothes consisted of a white, kimono-like outfit that stopped just above her knees and which showed her voluptuous figure despite it being a rather loose-fitting set of clothing. A yellow sash was worn around her waist. Her dark brown eyes held a hint of mischief in them as she watched over her fellow council members, and in her hand, she tossed a teal-colored lacrima up and down in her hands. This was Ultir Milkovich. The final member of the Magic Council was a young man with deep blue hair and had a red tattoo which was made of 2 separate markings above and below his right eye. He had slightly pale skin and wore an elegant yet simple set of robes. Consisting of a long white tunic with black stripes across the edges and on the upper part of the arms, a decorated collar, large straps connected to decorated buckles, closing the inducement on the front over a dark shirt, and matching pants and shoes. He also sported a ring on his right hand's middle finger.
Hidden by his jacket collar, the man wore a circular medallion, which was dark blue and lined with silver. In the center of the medallion was a silver, cross-shaped symbol with two silver diamond-like shapes in between the spaces of the cross. Near the intersection of the silver cross, there was a small silver circle with a single silver petal placed within each quarter of the circle. This medallion revealed the man to be one of the 10 wizard saints. This was Sigrain. In the council room, the members of the Magic Council were having a heated conversation of something that was of the utmost importance. "You! How dare you do this to me?" Ord cried out with anger. Bellino placed her face in her palm and shook her head.
I can't believe we're even discussing this. Org, the blonde council member said. The second seat of the Magic Council continued to glare at Yajima, who was smirking playfully.
Whatever do you mean, Org? Yajima held in the laugh within him, his smirk being the only barrier between his willpower and his need to laugh. You ate my donuts. Ord cried out, why would you do that? The rest of the council sweat dropped at that, except for Yajima, who was now laughing at his fellow council members' rage. Ultir and Sigrain looked at each other with looks of amusement. Yajima-san makes these council meetings so much fun, doesn't he? Ultir giggled. Sigrain nodded.
Indeed, he does. Before he came in, I heard this place was so boring. As Yajima was comically being blown back by the wind generated by Org's rant, an amphibious member of the Magic Council's staff, who looked very much like a frog, burst into the council room. The council became silent as Yajima began to peel himself off of the wall, an imprint of his body left in the wall. The bipedal frog panted as he clutched his knees, trying to catch his breath. The council members waited patiently for the staff member to recover before he stood back up. Insert music. Fairy Tale Tower of Heaven, Org-sama. I bring news of the Dark Guild, Black Knight. The council gained serious looks on their faces. Black Knight was always a very problematic guild. Their guild members had gone on illegal requests that demanded the act of killing and assassination. They had been found out 1 year ago when a platoon of Rune Knight had been wandering Clovertown and saw them drag a man into an ally and slit his throat before trying to make a break for it, only to be caught. Since then, they had been taking many security precautions to prevent from being taken down by the Magic Council. What about them? Ultir asked curiously. The frog took out a lacrima from his pocket and laid it out on the floor in the center of the council room. He placed his webbed hand atop the lacrima and pumped a small bit of magic power into it. The lacrima took on an electric blue glow before a similarly colored magic seal appeared above it and a holographic image of a destroyed and ruined forest was shown. This image was taken by the Rune Knights stationed by Tully Village where Black Knight had been stationed. Okay, so it's a destroyed forest. Probably done by one of the beasts in the forests or maybe a member of Fairy Tale. They have been known for their destructive tendencies, Sigrain said. The staff member shook his head. Actually. This is, or was, the place where the Black Knight Guild was stationed. The council members' eyes widened at that. What? Fairy Tale took this request, didn't they? To stop the Devon Theft family and the Black Knight Guild? The amphibian nodded, but gulped before continuing. Yes, Org-sama, but the thing is that the Fairy Tale member didn't arrive until earlier today and the citizens of Tully Village who were kidnapped by the criminals stated they were freed and the criminals were dealt with, and this was all that remained. They said this was done by a single mage. A single mage did all that? Bellino gaped. Such power. You're certain of this information? Yajima asked with a serious tone. The Rune Knights interviewed every single one of the kidnapped citizens and they all had the same story. A single mage with exceptional wind magic abilities came in with a fire kitsune and took down the whole guild by himself. He slaughtered the entirety of them and then blew up the guild, killing the Devon Theft family as well. The staff member said. Silence filled the council room as they watched the image. Ultir smirked. Master Hades would very much like to have a mage like that in Grimoire Heart. Do you know the name of this mage? Does he have any other abilities? E.g. asked. The staff member thought for a moment. They say, as I have mentioned before, the mage was a male and had great skill with wind magic, even going so far as to be able to bend it with a mere wave of his hand. He is said to have blonde, spiky hair and blue eyes. He wears a black cloak and travels with a red, three-tailed kitsune. His lower face is covered by a mask though. The amphibian staff member looked to see if the council members were still listening and found their eyes still trained on him. With a nod, he continued. They call him the Ogana Fujin. The staff member finished before picking up the image lacrima and the image of the destroyed Black Knight Guild vanished in a blue magic seal. The staff member watched the Magic Council with a few beads of sweat forming on his brow as he suddenly felt the tension in the room. Is that all? Michelot asked. The staff member nodded before he was dismissed by the council and he immediately, and quickly, left the room. As soon as the door slammed shut, Org spoke. It seems we have a bit of a vigilante here in Fury. The second criminal, Michelot spoke, his tail swishing behind him. He has killed mages and thus has committed a felony. The Ogana Fujin must be put down before it escalates into him attacking legal guilds. Michello has a point. Bellino stated, however, if we are able to bring the Golden Wind God over to us, we can make a weapon out of him. But that goes against everything we stand for, equality, fairness, and that includes granting independence to those who have it, the former member of Fairy Tail said. They all looked at Yajima with a frown. The old man did have a point. Yajima is right. Seagrain said. If we go after this man just for the sake of turning him into a weapon, there might be a chance that he will rebel. And with the power he has at his disposal. From what that staff member showed us, he would easily be able to take down many of those who stand in his way, and he is not against taking a life. I could try to reason with him. Ultir spoke with a seductive tone as she spun her lacrima atop her index finger as if it were a basketball. The Magic Council watched Ultir with a raised eyebrow. Honestly, Ultir, that would ruin your reputation as well as our own if you go to such lengths to bring this. Ogana Fujin. Here, Bellino said with a sweat drop. Ultir smirked at that before putting on a serious gaze. But before we even think of the possibilities of what this man can do for us, how are we going to find him? Having spiky blonde hair and blue eyes and his clothing description is not much to go by. They did say he traveled with a three-tailed kitsune, Org stated. Yes, but kitsune also have the ability to transform if the legends are correct. The kitsune could disguise itself and we wouldn't even know if that is it. Ultir argued. The Magic Council was silent before Michello tapped his cane on the ground. Get the Rune Knights in Tully Village to give us an accurate description of the Ogana Fujin. We will then have one of our sketch artists draw this man from the description and then we will use it to find him. Deploy whatever available squadrons we have and we will find him and bring this man to justice. Michello spoke with an orderly tone. The council members looked amongst one another. It's a start. Seagrain shrugged. Org nodded. I concur. Very well, Michello. We will go along with your plan. Rally the Rune Knights. Aye, was the simultaneous cry of agreement. Insert music. Fairy Tale Busy Street. 1 week later, Oshibana town Naruto and Kurama got off the train that led to the town they were currently in. The Dragonslayer and the Exceed walked through the train station without a care in the world. Naruto turned to the train with a sick look on his face. God, I hate transportation, Naruto growled out. Please don't blow up the train like you did back in Anabu's town. Kurama said, rolling his eyes at the blonde. Naruto held back the want to use Mokashiryu no Hoko and destroy the worthless piece of machinery, but restrained himself. Especially after what he saw when he turned around. Naruto had begun to walk through the small tunnel-like arch that led out of the train station to the streets, but paused when he saw a small poster as soon as he exited the arch. On the lamppost near to a house, Naruto spied a picture on the poster. I am impossible, Naruto whispered as he suddenly appeared in front of the lamppost and ripped the poster off of the lamppost. Kurama looked down from atop Naruto's head and his crimson eyes widened. Holy fuck, he gasped. The Exceed and Dragonslayer couldn't believe their eyes as they saw the poster. I know. Ramen for half price at the restaurant that's opening today, Naruto said with glee. Naruto sighed as he got into a dreamlike state. Kurama now had a very large sweat dropped. Your bag of gems is gonna take a drastic decrease in weight by the time you're done, aren't you? Kurama deadpanned. The blonde grinned foxily at his fire-using feline. Who cares? Free ramen. Naruto sped off towards the ramen restaurant. Naruto looked around the streets and after a few minutes of making wrong turns and running into people, causing them to be knocked down, the son of 2 wizard saints arrived at his destination. Ramen house. Not a very creative name, but the ramen is what makes the store. Naruto said to himself before walking in. As Naruto stepped in, he looked around to see there were quite a number of customers already in. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer smirked as he walked to the bar area. Just like Ji-chan's. Naruto thought as a feeling of nostalgia hit him. Naruto frowned though as the memories of his times with the old ramen chef and his daughter came to mind. Hey, buddy. Naruto looked up as he took a seat and saw a middle-aged man wearing a white shirt and tan pants with an apron around his body. He was bald, but had hair growing around the circumference of his skull. A handlebar mustache hung beneath his nose. What do you want? I've got a lot of customers here so I want to get everybody's orders here as fast as I can. The man spoke. Naruto looked up at the large menu that was posted up on the wall. I'll have one of everything, each one in an extra large bowl. The whole restaurant suddenly went silent as they looked at Naruto with a, what the fuck, look on their faces. Naruto turned to see everyone staring at him and then he glared at them. What? A guy can't eat his share of ramen or something? He snarled. The people flinched before turning back to their meals. Naruto snarled again, the nerve of some people. You sure, buddy? The man asked as he jotted down the order. Naruto cracked his neck and knuckles before putting on a grin that he only gave off when he was given a challenge. Is that a challenge? Naruto asked. The man's sweat dropped. No. I just want to know if you're sure about ordering this much ramen. There's about 102 different items on the menu. Naruto grinned wider at that and Kurama's eyes widened. Oh no. The cat muttered. Naruto pulled down his face mask and grinned his infamous fox-like grin. "Bring it on," he shouted as he split his chopsticks. 2 hours later the entirety of the restaurant watched in horror, disgust, amazement and many other things as they saw Naruto down the ramen as if they were bottles of fire whiskey to Kurama. Said fire using Exceed could only shake his head in amusement, a chuckle escaping from his throat as he watched Naruto continue to defy the laws of biology and physics, stacking up the bowls as he made a humongous tower. "How much is that?" a fellow who was sitting next to the blonde asked. Naruto grinned as he finished the bowl and used his wind magic to levitate the bowl and stack it neatly atop the others. "Counting that one. That's number 101.
One more." The fellow could only gape before he fainted upon seeing Naruto inhale the final bowl as if his mouth was vacuum and the ramen was air.
The bowl sparkled as it was cleaned of any broth and noodle. Naruto sent the bowl soaring with a burst of wind magic and it landed perfectly atop the previous bowl. Everyone looked on in fear as the leaning tower of bowls was suddenly leaning to the right. The customers and waiters who had witnessed the near impossible feat backed away into a single corner of the restaurant in fear that the tower of ceramic would come crashing down on them. Naruto watched the tower with a frown and growled. As if it were afraid of the blonde, the bowls suddenly returned to their original straight position and Naruto nodded with a look of pride. Naruto then turned to the mustached man who served him. "So, how much is it?" Naruto asked. The man blinked before shaking his head as he got over his shock. "What was that? How much is it? Let's see all 102 items, all in extra large. That comes to a bit over 1 million jewels." Naruto nodded as the man was about to tell Naruto he could manage a discount, but Naruto didn't listen as he took out his bag of gems and then took about 3 handfuls of them into the man's hand. "There. That should cover it. See ya." Naruto deadpanned. Everyone's sweat dropped as he suddenly resealed the bag before Kurama fell from his head when the blonde leaned back to yawn. Kurama used his claws to climb back up to his perch before Naruto gave a small wave as the man thanked him for the generous payment. However, as Naruto shut the door to the establishment upon his leaving, the door had been shut a bit too forcefully and the bowls all came crashing down in a pile of broken pieces. "It's all gone." The waiter sobbed as he watched the gems in hand knowing he would have to pay the restaurant owner for the broken bowls. "Aw man, that was so damn good. Not as good as Ji-chan's, but good nonetheless and with the amount I ate it was even more satisfying." The fox-costumed feline rolled his eyes at the wind magic user. Kurama then patted Naruto's head. "You okay, brat?" Kurama asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. What do you mean? I've known you for over 10 years, Naruto. You think I don't know you've been feeling a bit nostalgic from eating the ramen? Remembering Tuichi and Ayame giving you ramen? Eating it with Sakura, Ino, Choji and Shikamaru?" Naruto flinched slightly at the feline's words. "Peeved, I cut off myself from them. I feel nothing," Naruto said with a monotone as he continued to walk through the town. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Nakama, year X 769. "Here you go," she said. Naruto nodded in thanks. Acknowledgia had always told him that females, no matter what the species, expected males to be polite. Human females tended to be the most violent when not shown the proper courtesy and Naruto never chose to ignore the words of his reptilian parent. Naruto looked at the chopsticks in his hands before noticing they seemed to split. He then gave them a small pull and they snapped apart causing his eyes widen. "Ah, Gomen. I didn't mean to break them," he exclaimed. The girl giggled before shaking her head. "No baka, the chopsticks are meant to be broken. Look." She took the sticks from him and positioned them in her right hand. The left chopstick was positioned between her index finger and thumb while the other stick was held between her middle finger and index finger. She then picked up a few noodles, blew on them so that they would cool before holding them up in front of Naruto's mouth. "Say, oh," Naruto looked at her with a, "Are you kidding me? Look, he was the son of a frickin' dragon. He wouldn't dare take orders from this female." His dragon pride keeping him from denying what his stomach truly wanted. Naruto turned his head. "I ain't talking no food from strangers," Naruto said. The girl's eyes narrowed at the little boy before she raised her other arm and flicked the boy's forehead. Naruto tuned back and opened his mouth to yell out and ask as to why she did that, only to suddenly have ramen noodles enter his mouth. Naruto instinctively swallowed and the food became a bolus before traveling down his esophagus. Naruto froze at that. The brown-haired girl smirked in triumph and her smirk became a smile when she saw the look on his face. Pure disbelief. "This is the best thing I have ever eaten in my entire life." He looked at the girl. "What is this stuff again?" "Ramen, year X 771. Naruto, come on," Sakura said as she dragged the young 8-year-old Naruto to the ramen shop. "Alright, already," Naruto said with a smirk as he neared the shop. They entered the shop and Naruto smiled when he saw Ino, Shikamaru and Choji standing with Ayame and Tuichi. "There's my number 1 customer." Tuichi grinned as Naruto jumped atop his reserved chair. The ramen shop was celebrating its 12th anniversary and the old ramen chef was having a small party with the children to aid in the celebrations. After the initial morning and afternoon rush hours of people coming in to eat during the shop's special day, and now that it was night, the children were invited to come and have a little fun with the ramen chef. "This is troublesome, I'd rather be watching the clouds," Shikamaru said as he laid his head on the cool, granite countertop. "Now Shika, don't be like that," Ino scolded, "it's rude. You'll make Tuichi-san and Ayame-san feel bad." "Yeah, Shikamaru." Choji agreed with the blonde. Naruto chuckled as he saw the smirk form on his lazy friend's face. Tuchi and Ayame then set out the already prepared bowls of ramen before the children and they simultaneously clapped their hands together in prayer. "Itadakimasu," they chorused before splitting their chopsticks and digging in. "Amazing as ever, Tuichi-san," Sakura said as she slurped up the noodles. Naruto placed down his bowl and grinned. "Seconds, Ji-chan," Teichi chuckled as he adjusted the hat on his head. "I swear Naruto, you're going to eat out my entire shop if you keep this up." "Oh, you know you love me, Ji-chan. Besides, you get to retire early if I keep coming, right?" Ayame giggled at the blonde. "Oto has a point there, Tu-san," the young teenager told her father. The ramen chef laughed loudly as he ruffled the boy's hair. The boy was like the grandson he never had. After eating a few more bowls, Naruto and Choji both placed their bowls down at the same time. As the sound echoed through the air, Choji and Naruto turned and faced each other. A silent conversation passed between them as they both sported wide grins. "Oh, not again," Ino sighed. "Boys will be boys, Ino." Sakura giggled as she adjusted her red hairband. Shikamaru had stopped eating a while ago and was now just staring up at the ceiling, counting the tiles. "Troublesome," the boy muttered. "Ramen eating contest," Naruto and Choji chorused. Tuichi sighed as he took out his supplies. "I'll get the ramen ready. Ayame, be sure to collect Naruto's money after this." Ayame gave her father a mock salute before laying out the place mats for the two ramen eaters. "Go!" Ayame yelled as she placed the bowls on the tables and the two dug in. Year X 774 Kurama sat down in front of the steaming bowl of chicken ramen and raised a non-existent eyebrow as the steam rose into the air. "You sure this thing is good?" the Exceed asked as the 11-year-old children all watched him. "It's the food of the gods, Kurama," Naruto and Choji said, unconsciously drooling at the ramen before the fox costume cat. "It's okay," Sakura and Ino shrugged. "I don't care," Shikamaru said. Kurama stuck out his tongue and caught a bit of the hot soup and some noodles with his teeth when he opened his feline jaws. After eating the mouthful, Kurama froze as if he were in a trance. Naruto and Choji gave each other high fives. This is. The children all listened intently to the red-furred cat. "This is the most disgusting thing I've ever had. Where's my fire whiskey, Shikamaru?" Ino and Sakura began to laugh at that while Choji and Naruto began to cry. "Oh, the poor fool, he knows not of what he has done." The two cried anime tears. Suddenly a shadow appeared over Kurama and the cat gulped when he saw the fiery expression in Tuichi's eyes. "So my ramen is disgusting, huh?" Tuichi slapped his spatula against his palm in a threatening manner. Kurama's sweat dropped along with the children as they gazed at the angry chef. Ayame giggled as she saw her father catch Kurama before he could run and began to slap Kurama's ass with the spatula. "You insult my cooking, cat," Kurama hissed and meowed loudly as he was being physically abused. The children all laughed at the scene before them. "I wonder what they are doing now," Naruto thought as he closed his eyes. As he continued to walk through the town, Naruto spied a couple of rune knights putting up a poster. As the rune knight left, Kurama flew from Naruto's head and floated in front of the place where the poster was placed. Kurama's eyes widened at the images on the poster. "What is it, Kurama?" Naruto asked as he walked up to the costumed feline. Kurama's red eyes turned to look into Naruto's blue ones. "Naruto, we should get out of here." Naruto got even. "Why?" Kurama moved aside and Naruto's eyes widened at what he saw. "Impossible." The Dragonslayer tore the poster from the wall. It was a wanted poster. For him and Kurama. There was a pretty accurate drawing of him with his face mask on and next to his headshot was one of Kurama's three-tailed, Kitsune form, though they made him look more like a wolf than a fox. Naruto read the descriptions below. Wanted. Ogana Fujin. Said to have spiky, blonde hair and blue eyes. Wears a face mask like the one drawn above. Abilities include high levels of physical combat, speed, strength, agility and endurance. Also has mastery of wind magic. A multi-tailed kitsune is said to accompany him. Kitsune is said to be able to breathe fire and manipulate fire. If seen, please contact the Rune Knights in your area. Ogana Fujin is a wanted criminal for the killing of an entire guild of mages from the Dark Guild, Black Knight as well as the Devon Theft family. Naruto turned to Kurama and the two cursed in their minds. Naruto's hands trembled before he ripped the paper in half and shredded it with the wind. Those idiots. Naruto growled as he remembered the people from Tully Village. I knew I should have killed them all when I had the chance, but no. I had to play the good guy. Don't worry, they only recognize you if you have your mask on. You don't, so it'd be easier to avoid detection. Besides, I think you still made the right choice in helping them out. It's not their fault. The Rune Knights might have asked for a description of us. Naruto calmed down a bit after hearing that, but he's still annoyed at now having the freaking council on his ass. Easy for you to say, you can change into a cat. No one would suspect you to be a kitsune. Naruto snarled back at his feline partner. Kurama shrugged. Not my fault, and besides, what are we gonna do about this? The Rune Knights would have obviously put up more posters around the town, and unless you want to waste your time looking for them to tear them down. Kurama said. Naruto looked around before jumping atop the roof of a nearby building when he saw people walking by with one of the posters in question. Dude, this guy is doing Fury a favor. I mean, he got rid of a dark guild. Yeah, but who is to say he's a wanted criminal himself? Even if we've now heard of him, this Ogana Fujin could be a serial killer or an assassin or something who goes after guilds and destroys them. The Devon theft family has been selling people for years now. It's about time somebody stopped them. But this guy is said to have outright murdered them. Who's to say he won't come after us next? The Dragonslayer and the Exceed continued to listen to the varying opinions of his and Kurama's extracurricular activity. Remaining upon the roof, Naruto kept out of sight and continued to watch the people who walked through the streets. By the time night fell, Naruto and Kurama were still up on their roof. Naruto was lightly snoring, sitting in a cross-legged position. Kurama was curled up atop his head and was muttering things about how he loved fire whiskey among other things. However, the wind blew and Naruto's nose and ears twitched. His Dragonslayer senses sprung to life and Naruto's eyes snapped open, pupil changing from rounded to vertical slits. He quickly stood up, pulled up his face mask and blocked a fire spell that headed his way. Kurama wiped his eyes as he woke up, his wings unconsciously sprouting from his back as he felt himself falling through the air when Naruto got up. Suddenly, a group of, Naruto counted his opponents, 10 people appeared, all dressed in black. Black cloaks were worn over their skin-tight leotards, the hoods kept up to cover their heads. White masks covered their faces. 3 of his enemies branded weapons, while the others had colorful magic seals in front of them, making Naruto look like he was being surrounded by a rainbow. That's a waste of a thought. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the fact he just wasted another thought to think of that thought. The light of the crescent moon and the lampposts being the things to illuminate the flat rooftop Naruto was on. Kurama floated next to Naruto, still rubbing the sleepiness from his eyes. Naruto adjusted his face mask and then went into a relaxed position before chuckling. Seriously, this is who the Magic Council sends for me. You weak humans. I expected much stronger mages from the Magic Council. The mages surrounding Naruto didn't budge, but one spoke a sentence that piqued Naruto's and Kurama's curiosity. We're not from the Magic Council. The mage then jumped, sword held high above his head to bring it down on Naruto, however Naruto didn't move at all. Kurama appeared in front of the masked mage's face and grabbed it with a fiery hand. The hand burned the mask, flesh and everything else until only charred bone was left. His screams were loud, but they were silenced to everyone. But the Dragonslayer of Acnologia and the former citizen of Edolis as Naruto performed the magic, Silent Mist. The technique he learned from Zabuza, in which he expanded a cloud of pure magic energy, since he had the reserves for it, and caused it to mute anything and everything the user wishes to mute within the cloud. Naruto took out Ascalon and Excalibur and ignited the blades of his mother. Naruto felt Kurama sit atop his shoulder and the blonde's eyes closed as he channeled magic energy into them. His blue irises vanished and as they shot open, became a startling white. Mokashiryu no Byakugan, Naruto growled out as he saw through the mist, watching the now frightened forms of his prey. Naruto looked at Kurama, who looked back at him. Time to hunt. The Exceed grinned before changing into his kitsune form. His senses now heightened to a whole new level. The one-tailed kitsune took off and began to tear into the throat of one of the cloaked mages. Naruto walked on the air as he used his wind magic to help him move silently across his battleground. He tapped the shoulder of the mage he now stood behind and grinned widely as he could tell the mage was now scared out of his mind. Weak, Naruto said as his eyes became cold and merciless. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Kokuten. He then cut off the mage's head before heading to the other. Kurama impaled one through the stomach and the skull with his flaming tail, burning his brain, face and internal organs and literally killed him from the inside out. Naruto sliced one in two as he cut the body in half, vertically with Ascalon. He then threw the blade to his left as a mage had managed to see him and tried to hit him with a wind spell. Ascalon speared through the wind spell, the silver flames burning even brighter than before as it impaled itself through the victim's sternum. The mage screamed in agony, a scream that could not be heard no matter how loud he screamed. Kurama then appeared and tore off the mage's head and crushed it between his strong jaws. The demon fox grinned as he licked the blood along his teeth, savoring the coppery taste. Naruto and Kurama split apart and began to take down their opponents quickly and silently, the way Zabuza taught them to. Naruto stabbed one mage through the heart before throwing the body into the body of his comrade. The comrade released a scream of fear, a mistake that cost said comrade her life as it gave away her position, and thus Kurama was able to wrap his hand like forepaws around her throat. Kurama grabbed the top of her head and tugged it harshly to the side, and a snap echoed through the air as the neck was broken. The body fell to the ground like a rag doll. The three remaining mages wandered blindly before they were quickly slashed and burned by Naruto and Kurama. Naruto then lowered the concentration of magic in the cloud to give Kurama a bit more visibility. "Burn them," Naruto ordered. Kurama nodded and trotted over each one of the 10 bodies and set them aflame, turning them to ash in mere seconds with the crimson flames he expelled. As Naruto took out the magic from his eyes, reverting them back to their normal for mind to clean his shirt of the little blood spatter he got on him. Naruto and Kurama froze as they heard the sound of clapping behind them. Naruto growled and turned, Ascalon and Excalibur set ablaze. Kurama appeared next to his partner, 3 more tails sprouting from his rear, and all 4 tails swished behind him. Kurama's jaws opened slightly, a dim, crimson glow could be seen indicating that the kitsune was readying a fire blast. Naruto watched as the figure stopped short of the area of the moonlight, leaving the figure's body and face hidden by the shadows. "Who are you?" Naruto growled beneath his mask. The figure chuckled, and the Dragonslayer and Exceed kept their eyes trained on the unknown before them. "I've heard about what you and the fox did back in Tully Village." The figure spoke in a masculine voice. The figure then reached into the cloak he wore, and Naruto let loose a blast of flame from Excalibur. The figure jumped to the side, effectively avoiding the golden flames before smirking. "So the stories are true. You hold power beyond that of a regular mage." "A regular mage would be weak. We are not," Kurama snarled as he, himself released a crimson flame from his jaws. The figure avoided that attack as well. Naruto and Kurama let loose a sea of fire at their enemy, and the figure frowned in the darkness when the fires stopped. His hood hid his face despite the glow of the flames as they began to die out. The figure quickly jumped over the attack Kurama aimed to hit him with before twisting to avoid the slash from Naruto. However, the blonde suddenly bent the wind, and a powerful blast of wind crashed into the figure's body. Kurama's tails lengthened and wrapped themselves around the figure's body, and the kitsune slammed the figure harshly into the building's roof, causing a small crater to form. Kurama then threw the figure away, but the unknown enemy flipped in the air and managed to right himself, and thus was able to avoid the arc of golden flames sent at him. The figure rushed at Naruto and cocked back his fist, ready to strike the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. However, he immediately dodged the punch, and then the enemy's knee came up. Naruto raised his arms and blocked the attack before twisted to appear to his enemy's side and jammed his elbow into his opponent's ribs. A cracking sound was heard as a result of the force. The figure jumped out of the way, and a bolt of lightning flew from the figure's fingertips, but Naruto erected a wall of wind, and the attack was nullified before he changed the wind wall into a dragon. The wind-made reptile roared as it sped towards the figure, but the figure rolled out of the way only to get hit by a fireball, courtesy of Kurama. The fox immediately leapt after his prey and crashed down on the man, the ground cracking as the figure crossed his arms to take the impact before kicking Kurama in the chin. The fox's head snapped up before he was sent flying by a roundhouse kick. Kurama was caught by his partner and thrown back at the figure, who sent a lightning storm at the red-furred vulpine. However, Kurama breathed a tongue of fire, and the 2 attacks collided in an epic explosion, but the sound was nullified due to the silencing mist still being active. The figure dropped down to avoid a kick to his head, but was not able to predict Naruto using the momentum from his missed kick to spin and bring up his other leg, balancing on the right leg he had originally used. His left heel came crashing down on the figure's skull before he was thrown away and rolled along the ground. The figure chuckled as Naruto and Kurama growled at him. "You just don't know when to stay down, do you?" The figure didn't respond. His hand then removed itself from the cloak, and in his hand was a small card. "I have a proposition for you, Ogo no Fujin," the figure spoke. Naruto and Kurama stared at the figure with a perplexed look. "We're not interested. You haven't even given me a chance to." The figure was suddenly hit by a blast of wind, sending him skidding backwards, sending him to the edge of the building's roof. The figure looked back, noting the long drop to the ground had he fallen. However, as he turned around, but he suddenly felt pain in his chest. He looked down to see Excalibur was sticking through his chest, where his heart was. The golden flames were suddenly escaping through the slit in his chest and began to engulf him. "We're not interested," Naruto repeated with much more force as he twisted the blade within the figure's chest, slicing his burning heart even more. The figure chuckled, causing Naruto and Kurama to raise their eyebrows in confusion as to how the figure was still alive. The figure raised the card in his hand, and threw the card at Naruto, who caught it with the wind, making it levitate. "I want you to join my guild. I know you said you're not interested, but just think about it," the figure said before he somehow began to look very papery. The figure's hood fell back and Naruto saw the sclera was pure black. The body suddenly dissolved into dust, dirt and other materials before it fell away to reveal one of the bodies that Naruto had killed earlier before. A type of takeover? Naruto thought as he wrenched his blade from the already dead body. Kurama ran towards the edge of the roof and looked down to see if this was some kind of illusion and the original was below. Seeing no one, Kurama walked back towards the Apocalypse Dragonslayer before a red glow encased his form. Kurama shrunk in size as he changed back into his original form, a fox costume wearing cat. "What is that?" Kurama asked as he sat on Naruto's shoulder. "The card shows me where this guild that idiot wanted us to join is located." The blonde Dragonslayer replied with a serious expression. "What is this guild?" the Exceed asked with an equally serious expression on his face. Naruto frowned as he looked at the card. On it was an address, but as he flipped it around, the card displayed a dark blue symbol that looked like a stylish version of the letter R. The space in the R was made into the shape of a cross. The left side of the R looked like a wing of some sort at the top, while the lower right was lengthened and curved to look like a makeshift tail. Naruto sneered at the card before throwing it away and then sending a burst of gold fire, turning the card to ashes. Naruto sealed away the blades of Merlin into the pocket dimensions within his wrists before turning around, cloak billowing behind him. Kurama flew back to rest in the golden locks of the Dragonslayer. "Peeved. That human is a fool if he thinks I will join his guild," Naruto said, Raventail. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dark Guild, Skies of Fury, unknown location. In the shadows of a gigantic airship, a man sat within the shadows. The moonlight illuminating the room he was in revealing everything, but his face to the person in front of him. "Master." A feminine voice spoke. The female bowed to the master who nodded. "Rise, my child." The man spoke with an elderly voice. Altair rose up, revealing her form. She was no longer dressed in her magic council disguise, but rather she was in a rather revealing white dress that was patterned with tiger stripes which revealed her back. On her back, in dark red, a symbol which was made up of two jagged lines. Intersecting with the two lines were two arcs, one arc intersecting with one line, which curved to look like a makeshift heart, two small spikes jutting out of each arc. Around her wrists were golden bracelets and she wore a pair of black high-heel shoes. Her hair was tied up into two tails which rested on each shoulder. Her deep brown eyes looking at her master with that ever-present hint of mischief. "Master, I come to bring you news of a potential candidates for our guild," Altair informed the master. The master nodded. "Speak. You have my attention." The master spoke. Altair nodded before retrieving the wanted poster for Naruto and Kurama. She walked up to the master and handed him the paper. The master read it over and released a dark chujin. He would make a fine addition to Grimoire Heart. He would indeed. "Master Hades." Altair bowed. "The time of his resurrection draws near, my child. Return to your post within the Magic Council and keep an eye on them as you were supposed to, but when we find him, I will have you go with Zankro and Azuma to reel him into our cause. If he declines, you have my permission to use excessive force, but not enough to kill him." "Yes, Master Hades." Altair turned and performed a requip, changing back into her Magic Council uniform before she left the Grimoire Heart airship as a magic shield teleported her back to the building. Would see, Fury unknown location Racer, Hot Eye and Cobra were sitting amongst themselves within their guild house. Their master, Brain, sat in his throne, stroking the skull-tipped cane he always carried with him. Midnight was sitting in a corner, sleeping atop his magic carpet. Suddenly, the sound of running met their ears, except for Midnight since he was asleep. Angel panted as she clutched a rolled-up piece of paper in her hands. She looked up, fear evident in her eyes. "Angel, what's wrong?" Cobra asked as Kuberos slithered across the listening magic user's arm. Racer and Hot Eye joined their surrogate siblings and helped her sit down. "What's that in your hand?" Racer asked. Angel clutched the paper tighter before tears lined her eyes. She clutched her stomach. A place where the most terrifying maid she had ever met in all her life had nearly ended said life. She unfurled the paper and showed her fellow Oracion Cease members the picture on the wanted poster. Their eyes widened at what they saw and read. "Who is this?" Hot Eye asked. "I don't remember him." "Yes. He looks kind of familiar though," Racer commented. "You know now that you mention it." Cobra and Kuberos narrowed their eyes as they continued to stare at the picture. Angel couldn't hold in her outbursts anymore. "It's him, you idiots." They all looked at Angel. Brain raised an eyebrow as he watched his guild members and managed to watch as Midnight had awakened slightly. Angel's voice was very loud when she made it. "Who?" the distortion magic user asked. They all looked to see Midnight levitate on his magic carpet, over to them. Angel raised a trembling finger and pointed at the image of the blonde, masked man. "The one who nearly 7 years ago, the one from that incident." She reminded them. The other 4 members of Oracion Cease stared harder at the picture and then they all gaped in fear. clutching certain parts of their bodies where the Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse and Fire using Kitsune had hurt them enough to make them remember their rampage. Racer clutched his knee from where Naruto had nearly shattered it and where Kurama had nearly torn it off. Hot Eye held his thighs from where Naruto had stabbed him with his K's no Yaiba. Angel held her stomach from where Naruto had slammed an energy make. Rasendangan into it. Cobra stroked Kuburo's skull while unconsciously clutching an area of his back from when Naruto had nearly killed him with an energy make. Udama Rasengan and Midnight clutched his arms from when Naruto had removed them from his sockets and also touched his ribs from when Kurama had nearly broken them after sending him flying away. Brain washed the younger members and stood up. He walked over to them and took the paper of Angel's hands and stared at it. Who or what are these things? That makes you so frightful. Especially you, Midnight, Brain asked as he tapped his staff on the ground. They were like demons. Cobra shuddered as held Kubero's close. Nearly killed us all in one fell swoop, yes, Hot Eye murmured. Master. Remember that mission? 7 years ago, you asked us to bring back Wendy, the Sky Dragonslayer, in order to utilize her magic and allow us to use it to strengthen our own. Brain nodded. Yes, and it ended in utter failure with all of you in near-death states. You were lucky enough to even survive. Brain frowned as he tapped the cane on the ground. Why do you bring it up, Angel? Angel gulped as she pointed at the images of Naruto and Kurama. Well, Master. They were the cause of our failure. The Ogana Fujin and the Fire Fox. Brain's eyes widened as he suddenly felt his old blood beginning to boil as he read the part about Naruto and Kurama destroying an entire guild by themselves. The tattooed Dark Guild Master chuckled darkly as an insane-looking grin appeared on his dark-skinned face. I must acquire this man and the beast. With them, the goal will be realized and Oracion Cease will rule all. Lupinus Town, year X 784. Lupinus Town is an old town said to have been around for over 200 years. Lupinus Town was once a thriving kingdom, ruled by King Lupin, who was said to be a lycan in old stories of the town. Its most noticeable landmark is the historic castle of the former King Lupin. The town was also comprised of a market area, a number of houses which are used as homes or apartments for rent, and also a very large library said to contain nearly every book relating to the history of Earthland. A figure walked through. The figure looked left and then looked right. He looked up and then behind him. With a nod of what seemed to be approval, the figure walked towards the Lupinus library and entered the building. The figure walked into the depth of the library, the spiky blonde hair of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer shining in the light that the sun made. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, known as the Ogana Fujin, Master of the Wind and labeled a high-class criminal by the Magic Council, sighed in relief as he scratched his head. Atop those blonde locks of Agnologia's son was the crimson exceed known as Kurama, but to others, he was recognized as a multi-tailed kitsune known as the Onibi Myobu, the name had given to Kurama. In order to avoid detection, Naruto was advised by the crimson exceed to shed his cloak, much to his chagrin. But the cloak was actually the thing that made him look like his alias, the Ogono Fujin. Besides, the cloak was old and torn from countless sparring sessions with Kurama. As a result, Naruto complied to release the cloak and change his outfit as well. Though Naruto complied, he didn't really change his look all that much. He wore a dark blue, long-sleeved t-shirt with black flames lining the hem as well as the cuffs of the sleeves. Attached to the neck of the shirt, the face mask was attached. It had become a sort of a trademark for him to have the face mask. He wore a pair of black cargo pants and similarly colored boots. He still wore the necklace he had gotten from Seiko for his 12th birthday. The golden flame charm dangled as he walked. However, because he wanted to, he still bought a black cloak with a hood for whenever he would go into battle as a sort of a trademark to go with his mask. After all, a dragon takes pride in its appearance. Naruto sighed as he watched the books on the shelves. Kurama wiped his eyes as he was previously sleeping before looking around. Naruto, why are we in a library? I need to do some research on the Magic Council. Study them and know about what they do should they be able to find us. Naruto said as he looked at the numerous amount of books that lined the shelves. He continued to look around before he spotted the librarian of the establishment. The librarian was an old woman, probably in her late 50s. She had pale and wrinkled skin which was shown to be thinning as a majority of her veins were visible. The librarian wore a wine-red dress which was colored pale lavender at the cuffs of the long sleeves and at the hem of the dress. A pale blue, crystal cross was attached to the necklace she wore around her neck. She wore a large pair of spectacles and her silvery hair was tied up into a bun. He noticed the woman was putting away a few books before walking up to the elderly woman. She was currently trying to reach one of the higher shelves, stretching her arm to its limit to place the book in its spot. However, the book slipped from her hand, landed on her head before falling to the ground. The librarian muttered curses as she rubbed her cranium before looking down for the book, only to find in the hands of the blonde Dragonslayer of Agnologia. He easily placed the book into its intended place. Naruto towered over the shorter woman who looked up at him with a grandmotherly smile. Well, hello there, young man. How may I help you this fine day? The librarian smiled. Naruto nodded. Yes. I would like to know if you have any books regarding the Magic Council. Naruto said. The woman tapped her chin in thought before snapping her fingers. Ah yes, I know just the book, but I'll have to put these books away first. Naruto nodded in understanding as he watched the elderly woman put away the books, helping her for when she had to reach one of the higher shelves. Ah, all done, she said as she clasped her hands together. Now for your book. Right this way. Naruto and Kurama followed the woman. The woman then turned around, walking backwards as she led Naruto to the book. So, and I'm sorry if I come off as nosy, why do you want to learn of the Magic Council? Not many people want to research the council unless they wish to join it. Do you wish to join the council? The woman asked. Naruto snorted at the thought of him in the Magic Council. Please. Those idiots are nothing but power-hungry, old fools who try to hold a position of authority in a world where people wouldn't even listen to them. Fairy Tail, I've heard, is such a legal guild that they try to keep under their thumb, but fail to do so. The Magic Council speaks of freedom and equality when they themselves are doing the opposite of what they stand for. They create a hierarchy amongst today's society and threaten with the use of the Rune Knights should anyone try to speak against them. Naruto said. The old woman chuckled at the blonde's response. Does my response amuse you? Naruto questioned. Actually, yes. Not many people speak so openly against the council, and it warms this old girl's heart to know that there are people like you who see the council for what they truly are. And that's why I left it in the first place. Naruto and Kurama looked at each other with mild surprise before turning back to the woman.
You were once a member of the council. Yes, but I was in the Rune Knight division.
I was a rather skilled mage back in the day, however one day there was a time that my squad and I were to come here to this very town of Lupinus. A dark guild had been said to make their base here, and so we went to investigate. We proved that the dark guild did exist within Lupinus, but the thing was that they kept their members a secret, so the Magic Council came to the brilliant decision of arresting everyone in the town. The old woman spoke with a slight hint of sarcasm. At first, I complied because, well, orders were orders. I arrested people with the other Rune Knights. The old woman went silent as she stopped walking. Naruto paused as well, his ears still fixated on the woman's words. I had come to a home where there were children present. The other homes I had entered didn't have children present, so I came to the conclusion that many people here weren't parents, and it seemed as if some deity tried to show me the error of my ways. I hesitated to arrest because of those of youngsters. I thought, children shouldn't have their parents taken from them. I watched as they cried, holding on to their father and mother as I went towards them, and so when I was about to arrest them, I tried to help them escape, but my commanding officer caught me in the act, and thus he still arrested them, the children as well. I was then excommunicated from the Magic Council, and now here I am. Just a simple librarian in the town where I had once caused pain. Humanity is a flawed creation, is it not? How can you deal with living such a life? The life of a human. Naruto spoke. The woman nodded. Indeed. But it's the flaws in our creation that make us what we are, and it's people who accept their flaws that are able to become one step closer to being perfect. A bit of a contradiction there, but it's the truth. However, you speak as if you are not human. Why? The blonde Dragonslayer stared at her with fierce blue eyes. Because I am not. My humanity is gone. Humans are imperfect, and thus I live to be the thing my Two-san raised me to be. Humans are insignificant worms who do nothing but cause the destruction of their own. You make weapons and laws to destroy and inhibit one another. You're flawed, Naruto said. The woman chuckled at the boy. Well, if you cannot accept your hus, you are flawed as well, my boy. Naruto's eyes widened and Kurama held the blonde's hair and bent down to his ear. Do not harm the old woman. Do that and the people in this place might realize who you are, since you instinctively use wind magic to attack. The Dragonslayer of the Black Dragon did nothing but look down and thought at what the librarian told him. Humans are what they are. Because of their flaws. I am flawed, Naruto thought as he looked down at his hands, eyeing his sharp nails that gave him the image of having claws. Acnologia's Den, year X 770. A 7-year-old Naruto was busy trying to master the Mokushiryu no Kurokiba. Naruto swung his arms upward, the black and blue magic coating his arms. Mokushiryu no Kurokiba. He slammed his arms on the ground, and just before the attack met the earth, the attack morphed into the shape of a dragon's head, its mouth wide open to reveal its black fangs. However, Naruto's magic suddenly began to twist and deform before blowing up in his face. Naruto gripped his arms in pain, the magic burns turning the skin a bright red. He looked back and saw the backlash of his attack crushed the earth and formed a rather decent-sized crater. The black dragon shook his head in disapproval. A suitable attempt, however your magic fluctuates before you hit the ground. This causes your attack to become either weaker or stronger. Remember, Naruto. Your magic is yours. It does not control you, you control it. You weak humans are such an imperfect species, Acnologia growled. What is that supposed to mean? Naruto asked. Humans are imperfect. Your species' weakness comes from the fact that the human race constantly makes mistakes. True that you learn from them, but it would be best if humans didn't make mistakes at all. The humans always create things that bring about destruction. Your first and foremost flaw. You create weapons to kill one another. You create laws to prevent one another from doing what the people at the top of your hierarchy can bypass to make them seem as if they are above you when they speak of equality and democracy. You humans are unstable creatures. So what? You're not perfect either, Naruto countered. Acknowledgea growled and slashed at Naruto, but the seal acted and the crimson shield protected him from his adoptive father's strike. Another imperfection. Stupidity. Dragons are the epitome of perfection. We know everything, we learn things that regular humans could not even dream to comprehend. Your pitiful human mind is something one such as I will ever be able to figure out because of its feeble size. However, the thing that sets you apart is that you are part dragon. You are my son, thus you are closer to perfection than any other human in the world. I will raise you to lose your humanity and thus you will become closer to becoming a dragon. Humans are the epitome of imperfection, and I will not have my child be an imperfect whelp. Naruto stared in shock as he pondered the revelation Acknowledgea thrust upon him. So, my humanity holds me back? Naruto asked. The black dragon smirked at his son. So you're not as stupid as I thought you were. Yes, your humanity is a restriction. If you let go of it all, only then will you achieve perfection. You will be stronger than any other being in Earthland. You will my true Dragonslayer, the Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse, Acknowledgea said with certainty. My humanity is my weakness. It is a restriction. That is what Tusan told me. I let go of my human attachments. Sakura, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji. I let them all go because they were restricting me, and yet I broke it when I met Wendy, and now I feel guilt when I think about leaving them all behind. Naruto clenched his hands into fists as he began to feel confused. Human or dragon? What am I? He thought. The old librarian frowned as she saw the blank look in Naruto's eyes and then snapped her fingers in front of his face. Naruto blinked rapidly before eyeing the woman. Yes. The old woman chuckled at the blonde's sudden mental lapse before she led Naruto to the book in silence. She handed him a book about the Magic Council's history from the beginning to the present day. That will show you everything you need to know about the council. It's one of the few books that tells of the Magic Council, but that is all it talks about. The history, the laws they've made and the divisions within them. If you want to know any of the dirty secrets. The woman tapped her nose and winked at Naruto. You know where to find me. Naruto nodded as he took the book before the old librarian walked off. By the way, name's Minerva. Naruto was about to reply, but paused. Should he give his name to her? She was a former member of the Magic Council. She could secretly be a spy for them and she might recognize him from his wanted poster. Go with a fake identity. The exceed atop his head said. He nodded in agreement to the cat and decided to go with a fake name. He paused for a few seconds in his choosing of a name before a voice suddenly resounded within his head. You look just Minato-kun, my little Naru-chan. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise before glancing around, but became a bit confused as he realized that there was no one there and the voice he heard was obviously a young, female voice, so it couldn't have either Kurama or the old woman, Minerva, before him. Minato. Minato is my name. He spoke. He and Kurama were impassive on the exterior, but inside they were shocked when he spoke his fake name. Of all the names in the world, he chose the name of his biological father. Why did you choose that as your fake identity? Kurama whispered to him. Naruto blinked. I don't know. It just popped into my head, he whispered back. The woman smirked. A fine name, Minato. Well, if you need any more help, I'll be at the front desk. Minerva smiled warmly before turning around. Naruto stared at the book in his hand before walking over to a table and sat down. He opened said book and began to read, Kurama reading as well from atop his head. A few minutes into his read, someone watched the young blonde from behind a bookcase. The figure walked over, a book was also in the figure's hand. As the figure neared the table, the figure gulped with slight nervousness. The figure reached out and tapped the blonde on his shoulder. Naruto and Kurama turned around in perfect synchronization. Hello. Naruto and Kurama raised an eyebrow at the figure. You're. Insert music. Fairy Tale Magic Council theme, Hanabara. Magic Council Fury branch within the Technicians' Chamber of the Magic Council building located within Fury, the council members, Org and Bellino were currently observing the progress that the frog-like technicians were making in their search for the two fugitives or potential weapons as they like to call them. The technicians had managed to set up a link with the satellite square, Etherion. Though they were using the satellite square, they were not utilizing the giant, magic energy cannon aspect of its design. Instead, they were currently using its telescopic viewing capabilities coupled with its built-in magic signature scanner. Each type of mage has a certain magic signature they give off and thus they are able to be located using the satellite square. However, magics of the same type give off the same kind of energy signature. Since Earthland's population only had approximately 10% gifted with the ability to utilize magic, the search in Earthland had narrowed down greatly. Also, given that they only had to search within Fury had reduced the amount of time given into the search for Naruto and Kurama. A numerous amount of green blips marked a large screen within the technician's chamber, representing the mages that were able to use wind magic. Sir, we have managed to find all the mages in Fury that are able to use wind magic. A frog-like technician spoke. Within a matter of seconds, Org and Bellino were flanking the technician and observing the screen. Alright, how many are there? 200 mages are able to use WI, sir. The amphibious staff member of the Magic Council responded. Alright, scan for those with high magic power levels, Org ordered as he stroked his beard. Yes, Org-sama. The technician typed away on the keyboard before a green line swiped itself vertically across the screen. The number of blips on the screen then rapidly decreased to only 20. Where are those remaining 20 located? Bellino asked. The technician typed a few more keys before looking back up at the screen. Alright, Bellino-sama, it seems that there are only 10 mages with high enough magic signatures to be considered as the Oguna Fujin. There are 5 located in Oshibana Town, 2 are within Lupinus Town, 7 are located in Magnolia Town, 3 are in Frisia Town while the remaining 3 are in the Akane Resort. Where are the highest levels of wind magic coming from? Org asked. Oshibana Town and Lupinus Town are where the largest amounts of magic are located, Org-sama. The amphibian replied. Okay, good work. The 2 council members nodded to the staff member. Thank you, Bellino-sama, Org-sama. The technician bowed his head. Bellino then turned around. Captain Han, the blonde magic council member barked. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Jinchuriki theme. Suddenly a large, tall man appeared from another end of the room and walked up to Bellino. The man was about 35 years old and he was rather fit if the large muscles he had were any indication. The man was wearing the armored plating across his body with a furnace on the back that emitted small wisps steam. The armor covering his arms and torso appeared to be plated. He had light brown eyes and his armor extended all the way to the bottom half of his face, covering it up. Underneath the armor, covering the bottom half of his face, he wore a white cloth which also covered both sides of his face and the top of his head. Aside from his red armor, he also wore a red, conical straw hat, also known as a casa, over the white cloth and it seemed to be composed of the same material of his armor and furnace. Over his armor, the man wore a black gi with the sleeves appearing to have been torn off and a pair of black gloves. Over the armor covering his neck, he wore a bronze ring of some sort. As the man walked casually up to the elderly woman he humming a tune before coming to a stop. He gave a salute to the blonde woman. What you got for me, Bellino-sama? Han asked. Bellino pinched the bridge of her nose at the blatant disrespect he gave to her, but she, like the other members of the council, came to accept that it was part of who he was. Plus, given the fact that he was the head captain of the entire Rune Knight division and thus the strongest member of infantry in their arsenal. Deploy a squadron of Rune Knight at every single location on the screen. The highest levels appear to come from Oshibana and Lupinus. We cannot let the Oguna Fujin and the Onibi Myobu run wild. You have permission to use excessive force to take them down. Han gave a salute to the woman. Yes, Bellino-sama. I will personally go to Lupinus Town since those 2 blips seem to have the highest amounts of magic power. Han said. Bellino and Org nodded before the armored man walked off. He then tapped the large furnace on his back. Kakuo. The furnace rattled for a moment before it expelled a large cloud of steam. The steam then began to solidify, taking on a physical form. The physical manifestation of the steam was shown to be a white cat. The cat was completely covered in white fur with dark brown fur covering its paws. A light brown circle was shown to be on the underside of each paw. The winged cat was wearing a white costume with a hood in the shape of a dolphin-like creature worn over its head. The dolphin-like hood had 4 horns protruding from its skull. 2 of the horns, which were placed behind the frontal horns, were longer and more curved than the frontal horns. Each horn was white, but tipped with a light brown color. The underside of the cat's eyes were outlined with red markings and snapped open to reveal the dark blue-green irises within. The cat hovered in the air by the pair of white wings sprouting out of its back, revealing it to be an exceed. You called, Han-san? The exceed asked with a polite and respectful tone. Han nodded. Yes, Kakuo. We're going to Lupinus Town to combat the Oguna Fujin and the Onibi Myobu. He informed the white-furred cat. Kakuo nodded. I see, and you are certain that this is the location of the 2, Han-san? Kakuo asked. The armored captain of the Rune Knights nodded once more. Yes. Kokuo's voice then went down to a whisper. Well then, I must inform you that when you find the Oguna Fujin and Onibi Myobu, to lead them out of the town, for you see when in combat, my brother tends to wreak widespread destruction even when he doesn't mean to. Yes, he is that powerful. After all, he is the strongest of us 9. Han nodded when Kokuo answered the unasked question. Alright, but we are ordered not to kill them. However, I find that disappointing seeing as I would detest myself to see if I can kill someone as powerful as the Golden Wind God. Kakuo chuckled at the man. As do I when I wish to combat my brother. If he is your brother, then do you not tell us his name? Han asked. Kakuo shook his head, his aqua-colored eyes narrowing at Han. We may be ordered to take him down, but I will not reveal the identity of my brother. We are still family, Han nodded. I respect that, but unfortunately, if the Magic Council learns of your relation to the Onibi Myobu, you might be interrogated for treason. Kakuo nodded before dispersing into steam. I understand, Han-san. Koku retreated into the furnace once more. Han continued to walk through the halls of the Magic Council, unaware of the fact that Ultir had managed to hear the majority of their conversation, up until when Kakuo had dropped to a whisper. Though she would have liked to hear what they were talking about, that Kakuo had to whisper so quietly, she needed to report to Master Hades about the Magic Council's activity. However, Ultir was unaware of the fact that she, the spy, was being spied on. The little, black devil-like creature cackled as it had seen everything it needed to see before vanishing in a plume of black smoke for its next destination. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dark Guild, Skies of Fury, unknown location. Master Hades sat in his throne, stroking his beard as he faced Caprico. Caprico was a tall, white individual who looked like an anthropomorphic goat. The goatman was wearing a black suit over a white shirt and green tie. A pair of dark sunglasses covered his eyes and a pair of brown horns sprouted out of his head. Caprico was also the strongest of the 7 kin of Purgatory, 7 of Grimoire Heart's most powerful members. Hades smirked as he laid the cards in his hand out on the table, a smug look on his face. Full house. He spoke, revealing his hand to contain 3 10s and 2 4s. Caprico bleated as he saw his master's proud look, and it pained him to do this, but it was the rules of the game and Caprico never cheated nor allowed defeat. Even in card games. I'm sorry, Master Hades, but I win. Royal flush. Caprico bleated out the sentence as he lay out the entire set from 10 to king in the suit of hearts. Hades gaped as he saw Caprico rise from his chair before moving aside the card table. Hades grumbled as he contemplated his loss before the dark purple lacrima on the post next to his throne began to shine. Caprico noticed that Hades would require privacy and thus decided to leave the room. As soon as he did so, Hades picked up the lacrima and the image of the purple-haired woman appeared to the one-eyed man. Master Hades. Ultir bowed slightly. The master of Grimoire Heart replied with the same courtesy as he nodded to her. Speak, my child, he said. Ultir cleared her throat before speaking. Master, the Magic Council has begun to make its move. They are sending in the head captain, Han, and his associate, Kakuo, Nafujin, and Onibi Myobu in Lupinus. Should we continue with the original plan and send myself, Azuma, and Zancro, or allow the Magic Council to move and wait for another chance to strike? Hades stroked his beard as he contemplated the situation. He remained silent for a few moments, Ultir waiting patiently for his response. Hades turned back to Ultir and replied, continue with the original plan and hope you get there before the council does. You, Zancro, and Azuma will go to Lupinus town and retrieve the 2. Then, Grimoire Heart will be unstoppable. Ultir bowed once more. Understood, master. Ultir cut off her magic to the lacrima and Hades was left with the dark purple lacrima once more. The aged man leaned back in his throne before pressing a button on the armrest. Zancro, Azuma. Please come to my quarters, immediately, he spoke with an extremely serious tone. Within the minute, the 2 other members of the 7 kin of Purgatory appeared before their master. Azuma was a tall, muscular man with dark tan skin, light brown eyes and dark brown hair which was shaped into rectangles making it look like confetti. His sideburns were long and connected his hair to the goatee he had. Said goatee was shaped into 3 triangles. A brown line was shown to pass along his left eye. He also wore a pair of silver earrings in the shape of crescent moons that faced downwards. His attire consisted of a skin-tight green shirt that accented his defined abdominal and pectoral muscles. The shirt had long orange sleeves with a green ring on each sleeve, just above the wrist, which was connected to a green stripe that extended to the cuffs of the sleeves. The sides of the shirt were a darker green and were sectioned off from the rest of the shirt by white stripes that outlined it. Resting on his shoulders were a pair of shoulder pads of some sort that were a dark green color and outlined in white. His pants were a dark orange which had green rings with golden circles on them. These rings lay just below his knees and were each connected to a single green stripe. A brown belt was worn around his waist and a series of white patterns on them. Zancro was a pale-skinned young man, around 17 years old. He had long, spiked blonde hair that extended past his waist. He wore an armored skirt of some kind that was a dark blue, almost black, and yellow. It covered his entire lower body, except for a part of legs, and his upper body, except for the entire right side of his torso and his arms. A black shoulder pad was worn on his left shoulder. His left arm had an arm brace that covered his entire left forearm. His face had a wide grin plastered on it, revealing the sharp teeth he had. His crimson irises revealed a wild, if not completely insane, look in them. Ha ha ha. Zancro laughed as black flames encased his hands. Master, is it time to face the Oguna Fujin? I want to show this so-called wind god how it feels to mess with a godslayer. Hades nodded. Yes, Zancro. You and Azuma will accompany Ultir. She is in charge of this mission, so you obey her commands. We are trying to recruit these two, not kill them. However, if Ultir commands it, you have my full approval to use excessive force to take him back here to the airship. However, note that if you do manage to kill him. Zancro and Azuma were forced to one knee as the old master stood to his feet, rising from his throne. You will feel the full extent of my fury. Understood? Azuma grinned. He always liked when Hades showed off his large magical power. It reminded him as to why he followed the man in the first place and as a reason for him to get stronger. He turned to Zancro and the blonde teenager nodded. The two rose up and left the room. Hades watched the two leave before his lone eye glanced off to the right. Hades walked over to the area and looked behind a pillar, but frowned, stroking his beard.
I could have sworn I felt a source of magic here. Hades' eyes narrowed. Someone is spying on Grimoire Heart, but who? Unknown to him, Hades' assumption was correct as the spy was currently hovering above his head. The little, black devil-like creature gave a silent giggle before vanishing into black smoke.
Outskirts of Fury, unknown location on the outskirts of the Kingdom of Fury. There lay a rocky wasteland where nothing living appeared to be able to survive as there was barely any living thing within the wasteland.
However, unknown to anyone within Fury, the dark guild known as Raven Tail had made its headquarters within the area as the master, Iwan Drayar, son of the wizard saint and third master of Fairy Tail, Makarov Drayar and father to the S-class mage of Fairy Tail, Laxus Drayar, had created the guild within a large stony pillar. With the spikes of rock jutting from the pillar itself, it provided the guild with a natural form of defense as well as masking the guild's presence.
Within the guild of Raventail, one of its members was making his way towards the master's headquarters. The man entered Iwan's room and bowed to the man as he sat upon his throne. Iwan was a rather tall and muscular man. He had black hair, a trait that set him apart from his son and father who were both blonde and tanned skin. Iwan sported a unique-looking beard which appeared very shaggy. He wore a dark blue shirt and an ornate cloak along in a pale blue ascot. The man remained silent as his round, beady black eyes stared at the man. Ah, Obra. What news do you have for me? Iwan asked. Obra was an extremely tall man with pale blue skin and round, beady, black eyes. Said eyes lacked a sclera, making them look purely emotionless and also seemed comparable to that of a bird's or rat's. His long, pale blue hair stretched way past his shoulders and was tied into a ponytail. He had a fairly long neck and the upper areas of his face seemed to protrude forward. His nose was rather long and he had pink lips. Across his nose were two white belts with round studs placed upon them. His outfit consisted of a large, black, poncho-like cape which hid away the majority of his body and had a collar which seemed to cling to his neck and hide his chin from view. 3 white bow ties were bound to his neck by straps in a vertical line. He wore a pair of long black pants which were shown as a part of his legs managed to extend past the length of the cape. A pair of black dress shoes were worn as well. His outfit was completed by a black top hat which had 2 bronze-colored stripes encircling it. Obra stretched out a long arm from the confines of his cape and opened his closed hand. In a plume of black smoke, the small devil-like creature appeared. Lucy has returned, I see. Lucy, what news do you have for me? The black devil cackled loudly before exploding into a plume of black smoke. The smoke then twisted and turned to form a large ring in midair. In the middle of the ring, an image formed relaying the information it had recorded. Yuan stroked his beard before sighing. Though it would be nice to beat down the Magic Council and the 3 members of Grimoire Heart, we cannot risk the Magic Council knowing of our presence as yet. So we will let them play their little game of cat and mouse. However, given the fact that I witnessed the Oguna Fujin's power firsthand, they are most likely unaware as to the fact that they are the mice and are walking into a tiger's lair. Iwan chuckled. I will contact you for your next assignment later on, Obra. Till then, have Lucy rest. Obra remained silent, but nodded before turning and leaving the room. Iwan smirked. The pieces were on the board, and the game begins. Lupinous Town, Lupinous Library. Hi. A familiar blue-haired girl grinned at Naruto. The blonde sighed as he looked up from his book and Kurama was laughing inwardly at Naruto. You're someone I haven't met before, Naruto said, causing Levi and Kurama to sweat drop. The young 17-year-old had grown over the years. She was now bordering a C cup and had a more definitive curve at the hips. Her blue hair was now longer. The orange hairband was stir since that day the two met 4 years ago. She wore an orange dress that ended just above her knees. She was short as ever, though having only appeared to become a little more than 5 feet tall. Don't you remember me? Levi whined. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he gave the girl a once-over. No, should I? He asked. It's me, Levi. Levi McGarden. I talked to you about seal magic. I'm a member of Fairy Tail. She informed him with clues to jog his memory. Naruto then nodded. Ah yes, the annoying girl who wouldn't leave me alone. The blonde's eyes narrowed as Levi stuck her tongue out at him. So, fairy girl, what are you doing here? Naruto asked with a bored tone. Levi giggled as she sat down in the chair across from Naruto at the same table. Just a simple traveling mission. We're on our way to a nearby mountain range to fight a monster. Where are your useless friends? Naruto asked as he continued to read his book. Levi's sweat dropped as she scratched the back of her head. Well, they're busy glaring at the back of your head trying to burn holes into your skull. The blonde Dragonslayer nodded as he continued to read. So any new seals you've tried out yet? Have you tried out the interdimensional traveling one we had discussed 4 years ago when we first met? Levi asked. Naruto was about to answer when Minerva walked up to him. So, Minato my boy, have you found what you're looking for? Naruto shook his head at the old woman. No Minerva-san, he replied. Minerva bent down to his ears and whispered into them. She's a cute girl. Is she your girlfriend? Naruto's eyes twitched at the thought before he turned to the elderly woman. He clenched and unclenched his hands. Not in this life or any other. Naruto replied darkly. Minerva nodded with a warm smile before leaving him with Levi. Dwa and Jet were still busy trying to burn holes into Naruto's skull with their glares. Yes, you were saying? Yeah, the traveling seal spell we discussed. You tried it out yet? She asked. I have. And Naruto remained silent and that was enough to give her her answer. It failed, huh? Naruto remained silent as he turned another page in his book. Don't you have a mission to do? Naruto asked as he buried himself into the book. He had attempted the spell to travel through the pocket dimensions, but when he performed the tests with rocks and some of the bodies of the people he would kill along the way, well, let's just say, they never made it out in one piece. I wonder where the other half of that guy's body ended up. Naruto thought. A few minutes had passed with Levi and Naruto conversing about seal magic as they both read their chosen books at the same time. However, during a moment of silence when he realized Levi was still sitting with him, observing him read, he noticed her calculating gaze. What? I've just been wondering where I heard the name Minato before. That librarian called you Minato. Levi then tapped her chin. Where have I heard that name before? Kurama chuckled inwardly. Oh, I love the situations the kid is put into. The fox costume wearing exceed thought. Levi snapped her fingers as the name came to her. Alright, I remember. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he looked up from his book. Minato. Minato Namikaze. A member of the 10 Wizard Saints. I never thought you would look so young though. The solid script mage said. In the background, Jet and Dwa had been busy trying to pick their jaws up off the ground as they thought the man before them was in the same league as their master. The son of the Black Dragon looked up as she mentioned his biological father. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I am not Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash. I am merely someone who bears the same first name as him. He have lied. The brown-eyed girl frowned. Huh? Really? Naruto nodded. Now run along now, fairy girl. You have a mission to do, he said. Levi nodded. Bye, Minato-kun. Jet, Droy, we're leaving. Jet and Dory hurried after the object of their affections, turning back only to glare at Naruto. The blonde was oblivious to them as he continued to read. She likes you. Kurama rolled his tongue as he said that. Naruto rolled his eyes. Please, she's not worth my time. You gave her plenty just now. Admit it, you like to talk to her. Conversing with her is amusing, but she is not one I would look to call a mate, Naruto said as he continued to read. Kurama shrugged. Meh, true. Now hurry up and read. I want to feel the sun again. The Exceed whined. The son of 2 wizard saints rolled his eyes at the cat before continuing to read. Annoying feline, he thought. Once he finished reading, he left the library, thanking Minerva for her help in finding the book. Return anytime, Minato-kun. Naruto shook his head at how the old girl had actually bought his lie. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse was currently traversing the town, observing the area for anything that would interest him. Kurama rested atop his head as he always did. But it's only been 1 week since we were labeled as the Ogun of Fujin and Onibi Mayobu. Honestly, they couldn't come up with a better name for me, Kurama complained. Naruto chuckled at the red-furred cat and took him down from his head and scratched behind his ears, causing the Exceed to purr in satisfaction. Who needs a name when your original name is more badass? Kurama purred slightly as he focused on that thought. I guess you have a point there. By the way, shouldn't you buy some new clothes? These ones smell horribly and you should change since people might make assumptions that you are your alias, even though they would assume correctly. Naruto raised his arm and sniffed, his dragon-like sense of smell kicking in. His face contorted into an expression of disgust. You're right, but where am I going to get clothes? Naruto asked. However, as he was walking, something small and blue raced past him, a rushing wind following after the object that flew past him. However, as he and Kurama were busy trying to understand what had just passed them, They felt a force meet them before the owner of that force fell to the ground. Naruto and Kurama, who was rubbing his, now sore, muzzle, watched as a young girl got up from off the ground. The girl was around Naruto's physical age of 20 and hence she had a rather mature body. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that as he looked her up and down. The girl had mint green hair which stopped just below her neck, with an orange hair clip in it. She had deep orange eyes and extremely tanned skin, showing that she was either naturally born that color or she spent a lot of time in the sun, most likely the former. She wore a fishnet shirt beneath a white short-sleeved blouse and a white miniskirt. A pair of black, skin-tight pants that extended past the skirt prevented her modesty from being visible. She had on a pair of white wristbands. The girl wore a pair of white sandals. 2 red pieces of cloth were worn over her chest area which intersected at one point and made an X shape. "Ah, sorry about that," the girl said before looking past the blonde and sighing, placing her hand on her hips. "Great, she's gone. How many times have I told her to stop running off whenever she smells food?" Naruto blinked in confusion at the girl before placing Kurama back atop his head and continued moving along. However, he was stopped by the green-haired girl. "Hey, wait!" the girl exclaimed as she jogged up beside the Dragonslayer. Naruto sighed and turned to face the girl. "What?" he said in an annoyed tone. "I have no time for your games, girl. Now run along and go chase after whatever it was that you were chasing," Naruto said. The girl narrowed her eyes at Naruto. "Oi, who the hell do you think you're talking to? I'm not some bitch you can just tell off. Now apologize and I might let you off with a warning." The girl then paused as she looked over Naruto, her angry expression turning a bit flustered. A slight tinge of pink formed on her cheeks as she took in Naruto's image. "Or you could buy me dinner, any hard feelings between us?" the girl winked at him. "Could have fooled me," the Apocalypse Dragonslayer said with a shrug as he started walking again. "Besides, I'm not interested in having a relationship at the moment, and if I was, it wouldn't be with you," Naruto said coldly. The girl looked like she had just gotten slapped across the face, recoiling from the verbal blow. She growled as she held up her hand and clenched it into a fist. Kurama sniffed the air and his crimson eyes that were currently closed, snapped open before turning around. "Magic," he thought. "Naruto," the blonde's eyes narrowed as Kurama warned him of the incoming attack. He turned around as he felt the sudden gust of wind that impacted with his body. The girl was standing with her arm outstretched, a small trail of wind flowing from her knuckles indicating she was the attacker. Naruto looked at himself before looking up at the girl. "That all you got, girl?" he smirked. The people in the middle of the town watched the girl with a shake of their heads. "Another fight? I pity that boy." A woman shook her head and sighed. "Remember the last time a boy tried to hit on her or made her angry? Did those 3 get out of the hospital yet?" "Nope, and it's been 3 weeks already." Naruto and Kurama's ears twitched as they took in the conversation regarding his green-haired assailant. 3 weeks alone? We could make people stay there for the rest of their lives." Kurama chuckled. Naruto observed his female opponent and smelt the air as he got a whiff of her magic scent. "Wind magic, a rare art even among elemental mages," Naruto said as he watched the girl. "Now you've piqued my interest, girl. I feel so happy," she said with obvious sarcasm before unleashing another blast of wind from her fist. Insert music. Fairy tale main theme. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he watched as the wind seemed to oddly take on a physical form, even if it was for a second. "Are those claws?" Naruto wondered as the wind blast finally made contact with him. A large dust cloud formed from the attack and the girl grinned in satisfaction. "That should teach you," she exclaimed. However, as she was about to go and look for the object that zoomed past Naruto and Kurama earlier, the dust cloud parted, causing wisps of smoke to form arcs around him. Naruto scratched his cheek as the barrier that the seal his mother and father had placed on him would form, vanished in a flash of red. He looked at the girl with a bored expression. "Are you done?" The girl gritted her teeth before rushing towards Naruto and jumped, performing a straight kick as she lashed out at the air. The gray-green magic seal formed beneath her kicking leg and it sent a powerful blast of pressurized air. Naruto tilted his head and the attack narrowly missed his body, and the blonde Dragonslayer smirked before twisting and grabbing the girl's leg when she tried to perform a roundhouse kick to the skull. Interesting, he mused. However, even the Apocalypse Dragonslayer was not able to foresee his opponent's next move as the girl twisted, freeing her leg from Naruto's grasp and then rotating to go into another spin kick. Naruto ducked underneath it only for the girl to suddenly halt her leg and send it down upon his skull. The axe kick crashed down on Naruto as Kurama had leapt off of Naruto's head and the blonde fell to the ground as gale force winds followed after the kick, further injuring the son of the Black Dragon. The girl retracted her assaulting leg as the townspeople shook their heads in pity towards Naruto. "Poor boy must have a splitting headache now," one man muttered before moving on. It seemed as if this girl attacking people was a rather common thing. Naruto blinked as he continued to lie on the ground. The kick had some power in it, enough to send him to ground and give him a bit of a bruise on his scalp. But the 5-point elemental seal his mother and father left on his person would make quick work as it granted him a healing factor as one of its side effects. Also, over the years, Naruto had managed to have the seal inspected by himself when he finally mastered his seal magic arts over the 4 years he spent training with Zabuza in the art of the sword. He had come to realize that the seal would react to his own thoughts at times, only activating when he wanted it to activate and form the shield. In other words, Naruto could now choose when for the seal to become active by mere thought. The girl stood back from Naruto, watching as he slowly stood back up and dusted himself off. "Why won't you stay down?" the girl roared as she lashed a straight kick to Naruto's stomach. Naruto grunted slightly as he was hit in the solar plexus from the girl's elbow before she slammed a palm strike to his lower jaw. His head snapped upwards from the blow before she leapt at him, wrapping her legs around his neck as she did so. Naruto's eyes opened to get a view of what was below the skirt she was wearing, and although it was covered by her skin-tight, black pants, it was still a rather interesting sight for the blonde Dragonslayer. Naruto as he suddenly felt a tug on his body as the girl used the muscles in her abdominals, hips and legs in conjunction with one another to heave Naruto off the ground as she seemed to move her body in a back flip-like movement and slam Naruto head first into the ground. The blonde gritted his teeth as he felt the strain on his neck muscles. The girl was definitely strong, he would give her that, however. "If you are done playing around, I think it's my turn," Naruto voiced. The girl was caught off guard when the wind suddenly impacted with her side, sending her off of Naruto's downed form. The blonde rose up and twisted his neck, cracking the stiff joints in his neck. Before going after the girl, he sent a wind dragon her way, causing her to fly into the sky as a result of the attack. He then forced her to ground as he caused the wind to increase in the pressurizing aspect and a small crater from the girl's impact with the ground. The townspeople stared at Naruto with looks of surprise at how he beat back the mint-haired girl. "Hey, doesn't he look like the man from the poster?" one man whispered. "Yeah, but he doesn't look much like him. I mean, this guy has slightly longer hair and there is no kitsune by him. I mean, how does one conceal a kitsune?" "You got a point, but his ability to bend the wind, he must be a strong wind mage." The poster said he had high levels of skill in the use of wind magic. So, the gathering crowd remained silent at that note before departing to do their own thing. "So, does she hit hard?" "As a matter of fact, yes," Naruto replied to Kurama as he scratched the spot where the girl had kicked him once before. The red-furred cat stood next to Naruto, looking up at the boy with a hint of amusement. "Is she a potential mate for you?" he grinned in fashion similar to his vulpine form. Naruto shrugged before twisting to the side as an arc of wind was sent his way and lashed out with a kick, sending his own arc of wind at the girl. Said green-haired female suddenly inhaled and Naruto and Kurama's eyes widened as the arc of wind was eaten by the girl. "She's eating the wind? It must be Cyclonus' daughter," Naruto realized. The girl growled before channeling wind magic into her feet, the magic seal forming there, and she took off like a shot. Used to moving at such speeds, Naruto was able to keep up and thus he simply raised his arm and wrapped it around her neck when she got close enough. He raised her struggling form and choke slammed her, causing the brown earth to crack from the impact she made with the ground. However, as Naruto was about to continue, he suddenly gripped his ears when a high-pitched sound reached them. He cried out in pain as he felt his eardrums would burst. Kurama felt the same thing, howling like the fox he could become, but he looked around and his hearing, since it was less affected by the attack due to him wearing his fox head-like hood, managed to pinpoint the source. Kurama era. Shaking his head to try and reduce the effect of the high-pitched sound waves, he took off towards a nearby roof and looked to see a small, dark blue-colored figure. The figure was about 2 feet tall, the same height as Kurama, and had a single dark blue tail that was tipped with light green swishing behind it. A pair of insect-like wings that had orange-yellow membrane attached to a pale green exoskeleton-like material sprouted of its back. Kurama then noticed there were 4 tattoos below the wings. 2 on either side, each one in the shape of a wing similar to that of the ones the figure was now flapping furiously to create the high-pitched sound as the wings rubbed together. Kurama struggled to move forward as the closer he got to the figure, the greater the intensity of the sound wave on his paining hearing organs. After a few more, slowly made steps, he reached his objective. He then sent his paw ablaze and slammed the flaming paw down on the blue figure, which he then realized was a cat. The cat fell to the ground, clutching its paining cranium. "Ouch, what the hell is wrong with you?" the cat said as it turned around. With its wings no longer buzzing, Kurama's hearing was slowly returning to regular levels. As he shook his head to rid of the ringing sound, he looked back up and his red eyes widened. The blue cat stared at Kurama with pure black eyes. "No way. It couldn't be," Kurama whispered loudly. His eyes then drifted downwards and then settled on the cat's stomach. "There's black," a tattoo of the kanji for the word lucky, next to a tattoo of the number 7, was present. Kurama's eyes widened to an even greater extent. "It's really you," Kurama exclaimed. The blue cat stared at the fox costume wearing Exceed and tilted its head in confusion. "Who are you?" The cat asked in a feminine voice. The red-eyed cat looked flabbergasted.
I'm hurt. How could you not recognize me? Kurama pulled back his hood to give the cat a better look at him, and the blue cat's eyes widened before her mouth opened to speak.
Kurama. The cat's eyes widened as she saw Kurama smirk. Hey. Kurama gave a lazy wave. Ni-chan. The blue-furred cat slammed into Kurama as she embraced him in a hug. Kurama chuckled as he was tackled to the ground and patted the small, blue cat on her head. Nice to see you too, Chome. Naruto shook his head as he was trying to get the ringing out of his head. Apparently his opponent wasn't affected, meaning that he was now being beaten back by the green-haired girl as she bombarded him with wind attacks, punches and kicks. Naruto continued to clutch his ears in pain as a wind blast struck him in the chest, sending him skidding backwards. The girl then appeared above him and slammed an axe kick down on his head, forcing him to bend over from the force. She then landed and went low to appear beneath his form and rapidly crashed a series of uppercuts to his face. Wind swirled around her fists as she performed said uppercuts, sending him even higher into the air, and finally, she stretched out her arms. Wind spiraled around her arms before she clapped them together. A shockwave of wind crashed into Naruto, but suddenly the ringing sound stopped just as Naruto was hit. Naruto shook his head before grinning, stopping in midair as he applied his wind magic to fly. The daughter of Cyclonus could only stare in shock before Naruto raised his arms and suddenly he slammed them down. The force of the wind applied itself in a downward direction and she was set to the ground, unable to move as the wind continuously forced her to stay face down. Naruto flew down and removed the wind from her body. He clutched the girl by one of the red pieces of cloth as it went all the way around her back as well, and hoisted her up. He stared at the orange-eyed girl, his blue eyes meeting them. The girl snarled at him, baring her sharp canines. Naruto reached out and placed the tip of his finger against it, feeling its sharpness as the girl turned away.
What the hell is wrong with you? Don't touch my teeth. Naruto watched the tip of his finger, noting how that even that soft touch had caused the tooth to break his skin and make him bleed. He watched the huffing girl as she tried to free herself, but Naruto used his other arm and his legs to block all of her attacks, and since he was a master of wind magic, her attacks were not doing that much to affect him.
Oi, blonde-eyed. Why do you keep staring at me? Are you a pervert? I hate perverts and let me go. These red cloths are not something you can get for a cheap price, you know. Naruto smirked at the girl as she continued to rant. She reminded him so much of Ino with her tomboyish attitude and her never-ending mouth. Though that aspect he could do without, for even without the screeching sound from earlier, his ears were still being assaulted. Naruto frowned a bit as he remembered the platinum blonde girl. He then rested the defeated girl on the ground when she stopped talking and dug his hands into his pocket. So what do you recommend? He asked out of the blue. The girl blinked in confusion as she stared at him. Huh? She replied with the utmost intelligence. Naruto sighed, planting his face in his palm. You wanted to go out for dinner, right? What do you recommend? The girl stared in shock before grinning and grabbing Naruto by his hand. Oh, cool. I know just the place. It's my favorite one in the entire town. Naruto then paused in his walking, causing the girl to stop as well since she was pulling him along. What's wrong? She asked. Where's my cat? He wondered. Naruto scanned the area for Kurama, sniffing the air before catching his scent. Naruto flew up to the top of a building and landed as he spied Kurama with another exceed. This one being a dark blue color with a similarly colored tail that was tipped with a pale green color. As he was staring, he turned upon feeling a presence appear beside him, and he looked to see the girl had flown up next to him as a pair of wings made entirely out of wind had formed from her shoulder blades. As she landed, the wings dissipated and she watched as the two cats were hugging each other. Kurama? Naruto asked. The fox costume wearing exceed looked up from the other exceed he was currently hugging and led her out of his embrace. Oh hey Naruto. Did you beat her yet? Naruto nodded, but then pointed a finger at the blue exceed next to him. Yeah, I won, but who is that? Yeah, Chome. Why are you hugging another person's cat? The girl asked. The blue cat, now identified as Chome, let go of Kurama and smirked. Well, Fu. This is my brother, Kurama. Kurama, Fu. Fu, Kurama. Chome introduced the two. The red exceed nodded to the girl, now identified as Fu. And you are? Naruto looked at Kurama for advice as to whether or not he should give out his real name to her. Kurama flew up to Naruto and whispered in his ear. She's like you. I think those are the kinds of people you can afford to trust, besides you trusted Wendy with it. Naruto's eyes narrowed before turning to the green-haired girl and sighed. My name is Minato. Kurama rolled his eyes at Naruto's response. The boy was paranoid, but he had a right to be, especially with Raven Tail and the Magic Council both hunting for him, and who knows who else could be trying to come after him. Naruto and Fu then left with their exceeds, and the two followed Fu and Chome to the place that the orange-eyed girl recommended they follow her to. Fu and Naruto sat down at a table in the small restaurant with Chome and Kurama resting atop their respective partners' heads. The restaurant was a place that had a mixed menu, so it had a lot of variety in terms of things one would want to order. The waiter walked up to the pair and Naruto ordered the chicken platter, which was simply grilled chicken seasoned with different herbs and spices and served with garlic bread. Fu had ordered a bowl of wonton soup and some fried rice with shrimp. 2 bottles of fire whiskey came for the exceeds. "So, Minato, tell me about yourself. What wind mage and seal mage?" he replied as he took a bite of his chicken. Fu's eyes widened in surprise. "Seal magic, huh? That's a pretty rare art, so rare it could almost be declared as a lost magic." Naruto nodded as he continued to eat.
"How long have you been able to use wind magic?" "All my life. That's why I am able to use it such a high degree. I taught myself how to use it and made my own techniques. The style of wind magic that I use is my own. What about you? You ate the wind attack I used, so I'm assuming you're a Dragonslayer." "One of the wind." Fu nodded.
"Yeah, but not a lot of people here use magic, so they tend to dissociate me from them. I sometimes feel like I'm cursed to be able to use magic at all, let alone be a Dragonslayer," she said with a frown. Naruto shook his head. "And this is why I despise humans." Fu blinked as Naruto looked up at her. "You never take pride in what you already have. You're never satisfied. There's always something more you want. The greediness of your humanity is a restraint on your powers," he said as he flicked the girl on the head. "Ow, what was that for?" she whined. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer stared at the daughter of Cyclonus. "I've seen people like you before. You're probably an orphan and it's sort of a given considering you were raised by Cyclonus." Fu's eyes widened as she was about to ask him the obvious question as to how he knew her adoptive father, but he raised his hand telling her to wait, and so she remained silent. Naruto took a few moments to eat, Fu doing the same, before continuing.
"But one thing a dragon always tells their student, is to take pride in what they are. My two-san taught me to recognize those with strength. You have the determination, the drive and the power. You are the daughter of Cyclonus and the Wind Dragonslayer. Take pride in your magic and your draconian blood. Having met Grandine's daughter, I know a thing or two about the uses of wind magic."
"Grandine, isn't that Papa Cyclonus' younger sister?" He said how that though she and he share a common element, they utilized the different aspects of the wind. Naruto nodded in agreement. Yes, Cyclonus was said to have focused entirely on the offensive aspects of the wind while Grandine went into the healing arts, also known as sky magic, only knowing a few offensive moves such as the Iron Fist, Wings, Tail, Talons and of course, the Roar. Naruto explained. "Your Wind Dragonslayer magic is entirely offensive and so your moveset is much more diverse than Grandine's. But it's because of it being offensive that people tend to fear me. Though the fear has decreased with me getting older and better at using the magic, they still see it as more of a curse than a blessing. From what I've heard from the townsfolk, it's safe to say that you have a short temper and thus when someone tries to flirt with you or makes you mad, you manage to put them in the hospital." Fu blushed slightly at that. "Yeah, my bad. I support that level of thinking." "Huh? As I have said before, a dragon must take pride in its appearance as well as its abilities. As a Dragonslayer, you have been gifted with the ability to do things normal human mages cannot even begin to comprehend. The way I see it, humans hate and fear anything that they cannot comprehend or control. That is why the council is after me." Naruto gritted his teeth. He looked into Fu's orange eyes. "If you don't like how someone sees your magic as nothing but a blessing, end them. Do not let them decide what is a curse and what is a blessing. You are a Dragonslayer, take pride in that." Naruto's pupils went slitted for a brief millisecond before becoming round once more. "End them? You mean?" Fu gulped. "Kill?" Naruto nodded. "Or just injure them really badly, whichever works for you." "I kill," he said. Fu and Chomei's sweat dropped as Kurama laughed at the blonde's response. Fu and Naruto continued to eat in silence. Meanwhile, Kurama and Chomei were communicating through a mental link they shared. It was a trait shared among the 9 to be able to communicate with one another when they wished, but they had to be in range. Said range was rather slim too, so it wouldn't work over long distances. "Is your partner always like this?" Chomei asked. Kurama nodded. "Yes. Why? I like this guy. He kills without regret and he can switch his emotions on and off at the drop of a hat," Kurama replied. "It's just that. He seems so distant, like he's hiding something from us and by us, I mean Fu and I. When he thinks you are worthy to know that information, he will give it to you, but until then, do not bring it up again." "But, see Homai," I said. "Nope," Chomei nodded to her brother before downing another mouthful of fire whiskey like Kurama. "So how do you know of Papa Cyclonus?" Fu asked. Naruto drank the glass of water he was given before answering. "I know many legends relating to the dragons. I'm an avid researcher into the past of Earthland and I managed to learn the names of all the dragons as well as their elemental affinities. But that is all I know." He lied. After all, Agnology had taught him everything there was to know about the dragons. Fu leaned over the table and flared her nostrils as she sniffed him. "The scent of wind magic as well as your pure magic power is overwhelming." She started, "But you smell like as if I met you before, your scent seems familiar." "Why?" Naruto pondered the question. She was obviously detecting his Dragonslayer magic, and he cursed his lack at being able to realize she could bypass his wind-natured magic and see through to his Dragonslayer magic. Being highly attuned to wind magic, Fu could be able to spot the differentiation between Acnologia's magic as well as the wind magic.
I don't know. He lied. As he finished his meal, he stood up and took out a slip of paper from the backpack he had gotten for his 13th birthday. A gift he had never let go of since the day he got it. He took out a small slip of paper and Fu watched as he performed seal magic, release and unsealed his bag of money. He rested 2 emerald and a silver coin on the table.
There, that should cover it. Kurama, we're off. The red exceed nodded before waving to Chome as Naruto resealed his money bag and put it away. See ya, Chome. Chome and Fu gaped at how they're leaving. Wait, Minato, I have more questions. Naruto turned to face girl, wondering at the same time just how gullible people were to not realize he was lying about his name. If you want to know about where your father went, then you have come to the wrong person. However, all I can tell you is that the dragons left the world on July 7th of the year X777 to take part in an event that had caused them to leave you and the other Dragonslayers I have met along the way. How do you know all this? Fu stuttered. Naruto dug his hands into his pockets and walked off. When I think you are ready, I will grant you that information. The truth is that you've probably figured it out already, but you probably can't believe it. You gained the scent of my magic. Elaborate on that. Fu and Chome looked confused before Naruto walked outside and then vanished into the wind with Kurama. That looked really cool, I should learn how to do that. Fu said as she saw Naruto perform Shunpo no Kazejin. Chome then tapped her partner on the head. Fu, what did he mean when he said you gained his magic scent, and to elaborate on it? Fu remained sitting as she contemplated on what Naruto said. His magic smelt familiar. As if I had met him before. What does that mean? What did Papa Cyclonus tell me whenever that happened? Fu tapped her head and she tried to conjure the memory before it got to her.
Unknown location, year X773. Papa. A young, 9-year-old Fu ran up to her father. Cyclonus turned to face her and Fu stopped to bask in the majesty of her draconian parent.
Cyclonus was covered with emerald green scales and had an eggshell white underbelly. The dragon was massive and was in fact much larger than Grandine, but that was a GIV, the elder sibling. He had small spines running from the base of his skull to the tip of his thick, heavy tail. Unlike most dragons, Cyclonus had 2 pairs of bat-like wings. This allowed for the wind dragon to be able to perform much better in aerial activities should be just regular flying or aerial combat. The wings were attacked to the bone and muscle, which was covered in emerald green scales like the rest of his body, and the membrane of the wings was a lighter green. His teeth and claws were as sharp as any blade and were a startling white. His eyes were a deep golden yellow and a vertically slit pupil bisected the iris. Yes, Fu? The great wind dragon bent down to his daughter's level. I was just wondering. Are there any other mages out there like me? Why yes, Fu. There are many wind mages in Earthland. However, he tilted his head in confusion when Fu shook her head. No, Papa. I mean like me. A Dragonslayer. Cyclonus nodded in understanding. Yes, my daughter. There are more Dragonslayers out there in the world. However, there are not many, as only a bit more than 10 dragons have chosen to take on a student like I have. Papa, will I be able to meet them? How I can know when the people I meet are Dragonslayer? Will they be strong? Will they be ugly and stupid? I don't want to meet a weak Dragonslayer. Cyclonus' sweat dropped as his daughter bombarded him with questions. Okay, Fu, calm yourself. Your natural hyperactivity will be the death of you if you don't breathe. The dragon chuckled. Fu nodded before taking in a few deep breaths to displace the carbon dioxide in her system and replace it with the sweet nectar that was oxygen. Are you ready to listen to my answers? Yes, Papa. Fu grinned widely, displaying the sharp canines found in a Dragonslayer. Cyclonus nodded before giving off a small growl as he contemplated on how to word his answers. Well, my daughter, yes, you will be able to meet your fellow Dragonslayers, but not until I have finished teaching you. The levels of strength in a Dragonslayer are unknown because they can either be weak or they can be strong. However, due to this it will be based on you judge them. I would not know anything of their physical and mental characteristics, so I will not know if they are ugly and stupid. Cyclonus laughed a bit. Though it was a mere chuckle, to Fu the laugh had resounded through the forest they had made their home in. Fu giggled at her father. I'm gonna beat him up if they're though. Fu grinned. Cyclonus gently stroked the girl with the tip of his tail. I'm sure you will. Now as for your final question. How to recognize your brethren. When you meet people that are Dragonslayers, you will get a feeling that makes you feel as if you have met them before, a feeling of familiarity. Their magic power will also give off a unique feeling and scent only noticeable to other Dragonslayers. If you ever have that feeling, it means that you would have met one of your kin. Ooh. So all I have to do is sniff them. But what if they didn't shower and they smell gross? Cyclonus let out a loud laugh at that. You humans say such idiotic things sometimes. The great wind dragon laughed. Fu shook her head as her memory left her. Her orange eyes widened before running out of the restaurant and looked around.
Crap, he's gone, Fu said as she tried to see if Naruto was among the crowd of shoppers seeing as they were in the marketing area of Lupinous Town.
Why do you want to look for Minato and my brother? Fu sniffed the air, trying to catch the blonde's scent. After a few minutes, she finally managed to separate it from the numerous amount of other smells and she turned to Chome. Chome, fly. I need to find Minato. Two of the tattoos on Chome's back glowed before the insect-like wings sprouted from her back and the two took to the skies as Chome held onto the red cloths wrapped around Fu's body. Fu then gave Chome directions as they began to search for the blonde. Why are we looking for them? Chome asked once more. Fu's orange eyes narrowed as she scanned the area below. Bekwase. I think he's like me, Fu said. Chome's eyes widened. You mean, he's a... Yes, Fu replied, he's a Dragonslayer. Unknown location, outside of Lupinous Town. Naruto was currently leaving the old town and was hiking up a small incline. He had flown a good few miles out of the town's edge before settling at the base of said incline. Once he had landed, he reached down to the neck area of his shirt and pulled up the face mask before walking up the incline. As he quickly made his way to the top of said incline, he came to the edge of a forest. He sniffed the air along with Kurama. I smell danger, Kurama muttered as he lay atop Naruto's head. The blonde agreed with his exceed partner. Keep your guard up, Naruto warned his partner. The fox-costumed cat nodded as the two entered the crowd of vegetation. After walking through the forest for a while, Naruto and Kurama paused before sniffing the air once more. Naruto then spun in a circle, the air distorted around his arm as he formed K's no Yaiba. The trees encircling him fell to the ground as they were cleanly sliced through their trunks and Naruto and Kurama looked up to see a woman standing there. Hee hee, so you were able to detect my presence. Well done, Oguna Fujin. The woman giggled. Naruto's sapphire eyes narrowed as the woman walked up to him, putting a sway in her hips as she did so which caused his eyes to involuntarily stare as she moved. Naruto observed the woman as she walked up to him. Her body was very appealing to the eye as she was very voluptuous. She wore a very revealing white dress which was patterned with black tiger stripes. There was a slit along the length of the dress from her thigh down which revealed much of her right leg. The dress revealed much of her impressive cleavage and Naruto couldn't help but attempt to hold back the nosebleed he was certain he would have gotten. She also wore a pair of black boots and her dark purple hair was tied into a lengthy ponytail. Looking into her eyes he could see mischief in them and an exceptionally high level of magic power that caught his attention. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Pain's theme. Who are you? Naruto growled as the woman stopped right in front of him. Altair chuckled as she looked up at the taller man. My so demanding. You're wasting my time, wench. Naruto snarled before turning around before going to leave only for the dark purple-haired woman to grab at his arm. Now hold on there, handsome. I have a proposition for you. If it's to join that guild of yours, Raventail. Altair's eyes widened at that. Then I'll say it again. I'm not interested. Altair's eyes narrowed. So Raventail is after him as well. Along with the Magic Council, this could prove troublesome. I have to get him now. Oh no, I'm not a part of Raventail. That's nice to hear, Naruto said before trying to leave once more, only for Altair to spin around and suddenly appear in his face. She was dangerously close to him, her finger running up and down his chest as she pressed her breasts up against him. The action for some reason sent a shiver running up his spine. Now, the proposition I have is not to join Raventail, but to join a much better and powerful guild. Grimoire Heart. Our master has been keeping a close eye on you, Fujin, and he thinks you are strong enough to deserve the right to help him in his plans. Well, I don't give a rat's ass about your master. Now get out of my way before I make you. Altair tiptoed up to his face and her eyes became half-lidded as she whispered in his ear. You're making a big mistake if you continue to deny me what I and my master want. Naruto snarled as Altair's hot breath tickled the inside of his ear. Listen here, woman. Fuck off, as I told Raventail. I'm not interested in joining any guild. Altair frowned. Please, Fujin-kun. I'll be sure to grant you a nice reward if you join us. She whispered seductively as she traced her hand on his cheek and her touch was a feather. Naruto restricted the urge to shudder as the woman's chest was pushed further against his. But he knew this was all just a ploy to get him to join. He pushed the woman away forcefully and his pupils became slits as he looked at her. What are these plans that your master has? Altair smirked, thinking she finally caught his interest. Well, the master plans to find the hidden keys and use them to bring about the resurrection of a great and powerful mage. Altair blushed at thought of seeing such a powerful wizard in her presence. And who is this mage? Why, Zeref-sama, of course. Zeref-sama will bring about the age of magic and destroy all those who are able to use magic. He will create the one magic, Altair said with glee. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse bared his teeth beneath his mask at hearing that name. Pocket Dimension, Year X 776, Tucson. Who is Zeref? Naruto asked. The Black Dragon of the Apocalypse snarled at the mention of the Black Wizard. Naruto, where did you hear that name? Well, I heard you while you were mumbling to yourself in the den. You said something about a guy named Zareth. Is Zareth even a person? Acknowledgia growled as he tore up a tree and snapped it with his tail. Zareth is the Black Wizard, the one who is said to have nearly destroyed the entire world of magic with his ability to summon monsters and demons from the very depths of hell itself. He was a powerful mage able to use living magic and death magic. Living magic allows one to summon forth creatures from the earth, while death magic does as its name implies. It kills instantly. But what did Zareth do that he makes you so angry, San? I mean, I have seen you when you are angry, but this type of anger seems different from the one you feel towards me when I do something wrong, Naruto said. The Black Dragon stared at his son before snarling, his tail knocking down another set of trees with a single flick. Zareth is a pathetic human, even more pathetic than the Dragon King. He is one of the things that managed to do something to my mind and brainwashed me. Acknowledgia paused. He is one of the things that resulted in my exile from Algesia. Fuck off. If you want to resurrect that piece of shit, then you will have better luck than any other cult did. You will fail and you should burn with the bitch. Naruto growled before turning away. His patience was thinning and so he began to walk away from the time magic user. That's a shame. I was hoping we could have done this like civilized mages, but I see you're not one who is convinced by words. Kurama then watched Ultir before he noticed Ultir's hand make a single motion. And that was all he needed to see before he grabbed Ultir by her hair and hoisted her up before crashing her down on the ground. The woman released a cry of pain before he picked her up once more and held her up, hand wrapped around her throat to choke the life out of her, but Ultir slammed a kick into Naruto's gut. Naruto grunted as Ultir caused his grip to loosen around her throat before she continued to strike him in the stomach with the sharp toe of her boots before grabbing his arm and flinging him over her shoulder. Naruto twisted in midair and landed on his feet before sending a blast of wind her way. Fuuton. Daitapa, Ultir was said careening through the air. She managed to right herself and skidded along the ground kicking up dirt and grass before she sent her teal orb at him. Naruto's eyes widened as Ultir yelled out the name of her attack. Arc of Time. Infinite Sphere. A lost magic? He and Kurama exclaimed before they were sent skidding backwards as the orb crashed into his sternum. Naruto righted himself before the orb suddenly struck him in the back, and then his left side, his right knee and many other locations on his body. Naruto was then sent flying as the orb crashed into his back, sending him forward. He flipped in the air forming a dome of wind around himself as the orb crashed and did, shredded by the high-velocity air currents. Arc of Time. Restore, she cried out. Naruto then watched as the orb seemed to suddenly reverse its movement, its shards joining together before flying back into Ultir's hands. Interesting. So you know a lost magic. The Arc of Time. I've heard about that. It is said to be able to control the many futures as well as reverse the effects done to objects, but it cannot work on living things like humans and animals. Ultir giggled. You're quite smart, aren't you, Fujin-kun? The blonde then saw Ultir wink at him before snapping her fingers. You will come with us to Grimoire Heart. Even if force is required. Azuma and Zankro then appeared behind Naruto, both set to punch him, but Kurama turned around and let loose a blast of red flame sending both of them back. However, as they were sent flying, Zankro opened his jaws and the feline could only stare in amazement as his flames were eaten by the Godslayer. I'm all revved up, Zankro grinned as he finished eating the flames. He's copying the fire dragon's catchphrase. Naruto's sweat dropped. He then turned to Azuma who had ripped off his burnt shirt. Ultir-san, we will take it from here. Ultir nodded with a serious look on her face. Till we meet again, Fujin-kun. The time mage said before she winked at him and blew him a kiss as she waved goodbye. A purple magic seal then formed beneath her feet and she vanished in a column of light. I have no time for the likes of you two, Naruto said before slamming his hands on the ground. A large twister erupted in front of him and made its way towards the two kin of purgatory. Azuma raised his arms up as if he were lifting something and two tendrils of wood burst forth from the ground and crashed into the tornado. Azuma was surprised when he saw his tendrils were suddenly shredded. Impossible. My trees are invulnerable, Azuma thought before grinning. Finally, an opponent worth my time. Great tree arc. Blev. However, when Azuma conjured up the explosion to end the tornado, but when the smoke cleared, he and Zankro looked to see their targets has disappeared. He got away. The little fucker. Zankro cursed. Azuma placed his hand against a tree before sinking into it. I will find him, and you try to keep up. Azuma then disappeared into the tree's trunk with Zankro using his enhanced senses to follow the great tree arc user. The fire godslayer cackled maniacally. This is gonna be sweet. Zankro howled as his fists erupted into black flames. Naruto and Kurama appeared in another section of the woods within a swirl of wind. Why are we running? We're not running, Naruto said. Then what was it that we're doing seeing as we're retreating from our opponents? Kurama growled. You are never one to abandon your opponents. You always stand and fight. So why are you not fighting now? Naruto raised his hand and the Exceed was silenced. Because there is someone else here, Naruto said before he turned around and clapped his hands together. A gray-green magic seal appeared in front of him before a giant tree trunk that was headed for him became nothing but splinters. The Dragonslayer and Exceed watched as a large man garbed in red armor and appeared to have a large furnace on his back appeared from the brush. On his casa, the crest of the Magic Council was emblazoned in gold. Who is that? Kurama asked. Naruto took his mind back to the book he read in the library. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Jinchuriki theme. The books described this man as head captain Han, the leader of the entirety of the Rune Knights. Naruto informed his feline companion. Kurama snarled before jumping off of Naruto's shoulder and changing into his kitsune form. Han was accompanied by an entire squadron of Rune Knights and the Brown Eyes Man raised his head to stare at the two criminals. Ogana Fujin and Onibi Myobu, you are to come with me to the Magic Council as you are under arrest for performing the taboo of all mages. You have killed through the use of your magic. Come quietly and you trial. If not. Han smashed his fist against his palm. Things might get a little messy. The furnace on Han's back rattled slightly before a cloud of steam erupted from the furnace and took on physical form. Kurama snarled as he watched the white-furred cat float in the air. Kakuo. The kitsune snarled as he allowed 5 more of tails to form, giving him a total of 6 tails. 6 tails? Kurama. Who is that? Naruto asked with mild surprise. Never had Kurama had to go more than 4 tails in any fight, but to go 6 tails. It was just unheard of unless it was a fight with him or Aknologia when he was forced to use all 9 tails. Hello, brother, Kakuo said as the white-furred feline became shrouded in white steam. The costume clung to his body and Kakuo suddenly became the size of a large wolf like Kurama and 5 tails sprouted from the cat's rear. His paws suddenly elongated and became hard, changing into hooves. His body structure morphed into that of a horse's, but his head became similar to that of a dolphin's. Kakuo stamped his hooves on the ground and released a cry that sounded like a mixture of a dolphin's whistles and clicks and the whinny of a horse. Kakuo, what are you doing? Kurama asked, obviously angry with his brother. The dolphin horse stared at his brother and bowed. I am sorry, Kurama-ni, but I am a part of the Magic Council with Han-san. We are ordered to bring you 2 into custody. Kakuo said with a respectful tone. You are asked to come with us. And if I say no? Kurama snarled. Kakuo sighed. Please, Kurama, I do not wish to hurt you. You may be the strongest of us 9, but even if you are, you know that I am able to put up a fight against you. After all, I was very close to defeating Yuki. Kurama remained silent. Han then looked at Kakuo and the two nodded to each other. Insert music. Fairy Tail released power, Rune Knights. Take him down. The Rune Knights charged forth and Naruto raised an eyebrow as they ran towards him, staffs glowing in their hands. They slammed them on the ground and the earth rose up and a large hand rose up from the confines of the earth and flew towards the blonde Dragonslayer and the Exceed. Naruto raised his leg up and brought it downwards sending an arc of wind at the fist, slicing the object completely in half. The attack continued and ended the lives of 4 members of the squadron. The Rune Knight then sent blasts of flame at the 2 only for Kurama to inhale them and then spat them back out as raging spheroids of burning oxygen. 5 more Rune Knights were burnt to ashes before Naruto waved his hand lazily and Han and Kakuo stared in amazement as there was a distortion in the air and suddenly the remaining 11 members of the squadron were easily cut down. Han then felt his armor being hit by the strike, but there was no damage done. His armor was made of the strongest metals and elements and was also protected with a few defensive runes. Han and Kakuo stared at the dead bodies of the Rune Knights before the sound of cracking wood was heard. The Rune Knights, Kakuo, Kurama and Naruto turned to see the trees behind them shatter as a blast of black flames destroyed them. Zankro and Azuma walked out of the flames unharmed, per Zankro's will. You will come with us to Grimoire Heart as Master Hades demands, Ogana Fujin and Onibi Myobu, Azuma said. Grimoire Heart? Kakuo pondered the name. Han-san, they're a dark guild. One that has eluded us for quite some time. Han smirked as he crackled his knuckles eagerly and Kakuo stamped his hooves. Well, what do you know, 2 birds with 1 stone. I might get a big fat pay raise at the end of this. Han chuckled as he got into a battle stance. Zankro's fists became encased in black flames as he cackled. Bring it on. Azuma did the same as Zankro and caused 3 large, whip-like roots to spring forth from the ground as they bent to his will. Naruto and Kurama watched the 2 parties before they sighed. An aura of fire surrounded Kurama and the wind swirled around Naruto. The Dragonslayer raised his hands and the members of Grimoire Heart and the Magic Council felt the increase in magic power in the air. Wind and fire swirled around the 2 fugitives before their eyes snapped open. Naruto's, a shining white and Kurama's were an even more evil-looking crimson. A large shockwave of wind and fire erupted from both of them. Zankro quickly ate the flames, but he was sent skidding backwards as the force of the winds met his body while Azuma shielded his body with his roots. Han slammed his hands into the earth and pulled up a piece of the earth and used it as a shield to protect him and Kakuho. When the flames and the wind died down, Han let down the earth wall, while Azuma moved his burnt roots aside, having turned to ash from the flame's intensity. Zankro was busy removing himself from the trunk of a tree. They were all staring in amazement as the entire area within a 10-mile radius was burnt to nothing. It was like a forest fire had started and only chose to burn out everything in the area. A few embers were still present, but they were quickly snuffed out by the howling winds. Such amazing strength. Han commented. I told you my brother has a knack for widespread destruction, Kakuho said. Han nodded in agreement with the dolphin horse. I can see why Master Hades wants these two in our guild. Azuma smirked before cracking his joints. This man and animal are surely strong. Ha 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 ha. I'll show this little bitch just how it feels to face a godslayer. Zankro howled with laughter. Naruto and Kurama then slipped into fighting stances. The kitsune bared his teeth, his eyes focusing on his five-tailed brother. Naruto's eyes literally shone as he observed his opponents. Everyone then watched as the images of a dragon and a fox appeared in the air, their killing intent and magic power being manifested in those forms. The two manifestations snarled as Naruto and Kurama spoke. You want to fight? The kitsune asked. Then we will give you a fight and we will show you why they call us the Oguna Fujin and the Onibi Myobu. The manifestations roared before enveloping Naruto and Kurama in gray, green and red auras, respectively. Naruto's aura of magic power then began to shift between gray, green and blue, black, and Kurama noticed this. The sleeping dragon is beginning to stir.